Sure. All right, let's pop you over here, and here we are. Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Can we see our guest? We can see Agnar. Welcome. Welcome on in. Thank you so much for being here. How are you? I'm doing good. I've got my coffee. And now you're here. So we've got coffee and a scientist. Check all the boxes. Awesome. Well, you can't hear Agnar. Okay, there we go. I see what the problem is. Okay. This is the problem. Alrighty, try again. Would you mind saying something?
Hello?
There we go. Now everybody can hear you.
Testing.
That was on me.
Cool,
There
okay.
we go. Awesome. Great. Can hear. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. We've got a big crowd. I'm excited. Everybody woke up early to talk with you. Yeah. So I'm so stoked. Thank you so much for being here and making the time, taking time out of your weekend. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So you work at NASA Mission Control. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
How did you get that job? I can't tell you how many people in the science Twitch community are just love space and love NASA and love astronomy and astrophysics. I mean, how did you get to where you are today?
Um, Honestly, it's a career path I didn't expect. So I knew my whole life that I wanted to work with space. That was always my thing. And so I went to undergrad at University of Colorado, did an astrophysics major, um, and then from there just topped straight over to grad school at New Mexico State. And I enrolled in the PhD program there. And while I was there, some medical issues started to come up. I think the major one was that I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which my mom also has. So I sort of started to recognize, like, oh, like I have symptoms that are kind of mirroring what I've seen mom deal with. Um, which is it's manageable, but the problem is that New Mexico State is in a part of the country that doesn't have a whole lot of medical resources. It's sort of in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
Um, and so I went to a pain clinic that wasn't super helpful. It would basically, I would go there and they would be like, "Hey, is anything better?" And I'd be like, "Not really." And they'd be like, "I'm sorry that the medicine isn't working. Anyway, we'll see you in a month." And so it was like, why am I paying to go to a medical clinic that's not actually really helping me? They did give me a referral to a rheumatologist, and there were only three in the area, and none of them were accepting new clients.
Oh,
Um,
that's hard.
and so I was struggling a whole lot, and so I talked with my advisor about it. And I also, on top of all of that, I was transitioning during. I'm transgender, and I started transitioning in grad school, which was also a lot to deal with.
I can imagine. There's some people, some students at where I teach at that are going through the same thing. So I really appreciate you saying that. I really appreciate you saying something and identifying as that, because I know that that can give a lot of hope to people who might be going through the same thing. You know.
Oh yeah, it's I at first I thought, like why am I struggling so much to handle all this? But in retrospect, it's like I was dealing with a lot. So I talked with my advisor about it, and decided that I had already completed enough to qualify for the masters. So I got my masters, and then I went on medical leave, um, and came back home to Houston, because I know that we have medical infrastructure here. It's the biggest medical center in the nation. Um, and my mom has her fibro under control. She sees a rheumatologist who knows exactly what to do to treat hers. Um, and so I came home and kind of took a break from academia for a little bit. And the idea was, like you know, while I'll get like a temporary job while I'm working, or working on my health, and then I'll, go back to grad school and finish out the PhD. And that was kind of the plan. And then COVID happened. and I kind of got stuck working at Starbucks for like 3 years.
During
Because
COVID?
yeah,
Oh my God, you are a saint and a warrior. Holy crap.
thank you. Yeah, I had just started there in September of 2019. Uh, and so that was my, like temporary job while I was getting my health under control, and then it ended up not being very temporary because nobody was hiring. And also, they started to rely on me a lot. I got promoted multiple times pretty quickly, um, and so eventually I was a shift supervisor, like running assigning people to different stations and handling the cash and all that. And so when COVID started to, wane, like the mask mandates went away, like the vaccine was readily available, people were, figuring out how to go on without it. I kind of like took a step back and was like, I'm doing so much work for Starbucks that I don't really have time to apply to any jobs that are actually in my field. And I would really like to do something in my field that uses my degree because, I mean, there were aspects of it that were fun, but it was not space, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I left and I started I literally I found a list of all of Johnson Space Center's contractors and just jumped into their various hiring platforms and started going through every job they had posted and applying for ones that I met the qualifications for. And I got some interviews that ended up not panning out. Most of them I didn't hear back at all. Um, but the system test one uh, was I applied not even really knowing what it was. I just looked at the like, okay, they like want a STEM degree, but they're not requiring you to be an engineer. So like that sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I got the phone call and they asked for an interview and they told me, yeah, what you would be doing here is testing the software that Mission Control uses before it actually gets deployed out to Mission Control to make sure that it works. And the position I applied for was actually testing the trajectory services. So like if you see like videos of Mission Control, those big maps of the Earth that they have up at the front that has the position of ISS on it,
Oh, yeah.
that's the trajectory software.
Oh, so
And so
you
they were
do
looking.
that.
Well, I was going to do that. That was the position I applied for, and then after I interviewed, my now boss got back to me and said, "So the position you applied for is actually an entry level position, but it sounds like you have experience because I mean in astronomy we have to know how to write code because there's no software that exists to be able to do our specific niche research, right? You have to write all of your own data analysis tools.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, I had plenty of experience being both a developer and a user and everything in between because I'm just using my own software. And so he said, "It sounds like you already have experience, and so would you be interested in being on the team that tests the core software instead of the trajectory services? Because that's not entry level, and so I'd be able to pay you more."
Hey.
And I was like, "I don't really know what that means, but sure." And so now that I'm working there, I can tell you the core software is the stuff that like allows you to send commands between mission control and a vehicle or ISS, all the communications, um, what else is in there? Storage of like file storage, like tracking where information is going. The I mean, it really is like the core stuff that allows all of this space travel stuff to function.
Wow.
And so what I test specifically is the external interfaces. So that's all of our communications and commanding between us and external partners like ESA or JAXA, or even the commercial partners like SpaceX or Northrop Grumman, because the mission systems are heavily protected by firewalls,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you have to make sure that information is able to get through those firewalls to the people that need it.
But only very
Um,
specific information through very specific ways, right?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's what I test.
Cool. That's awesome. That's so amazing. I know that like so you can just have a STEM degree and know how to code. And if you can
Yeah,
go through, find contractors and make your way up, you can work at NASA.
yeah,
Wow. Wow. I know that there's so many people who watch Science Twitch that code that would love to do your job, I'm sure. So that's amazing that you're sharing that information. I'm sure that there are probably people watching that are just going to be like, "Oh, this weekend applying for jobs." I have no doubt. That's so cool.
yeah. I will also say anybody who has a degree that is biology adjacent, I saw so many applications on so many contractors looking for people with like some kind of like life sciences
Ooh.
connection, because they do a lot of stuff with the contractor I work for also has the human health and performance contract,
Oh.
which is all about like humans specifically in space. It's, the that's actually the contract that my mom is on. She's the director of the employee assistance program out there.
Oh, cool.
So basically the like chief therapist at JSC. Um, so yeah, there are all kinds of jobs that, I mean, you don't even necessarily have to have a STEM degree. There are
Wow.
lawyers. There are yeah, actually, a friend of mine works out there who did her undergrad in psychology. Hasn't been to grad school yet, um, but works as an administrative assistant. So doing things like scheduling and maintaining patient records in the clinic and things like that. So yeah, but biology, it seems like, is a big one right now,
That's good to
because
know.
they're doing a lot of studying about like, what do we need to know about humans to get us to Mars successfully? These long
Mm.
duration missions. How do we, take care of people in space for that length of time, the 3 years that it would take to get there? So yeah, if you want to work at NASA and you have any kind of biology adjacent degree, there is a lot of opportunity out there to apply for.
That's so good to know because, like, I always thought that you had to be like a physicist. I truly did. I thought you had to be like a physicist or, like an Air Force pilot or something if you wanted to work at NASA.
Yeah, it seems that's definitely. I mean, during the Apollo days for sure. But yeah, that perception has not really diminished. But
Huh.
I was actually just on a panel last week for my alma mater had like a Johnson Space Center day at CU, and they someone figured out that I used to go there and asked me to be on the panel. Um, and there was a panel just specifically for non-engineering students who were interested in working at NASA. Like, what
Oh,
can we
cool.
do out there that isn't engineering? And so that was cool for me because I got to hear from the other panelists who are, nowhere near engineering, um, to see, like, oh wow, there's actually like a lot of stuff that people do that has nothing to do with engineering.
Dang. So tell me a little bit about your job. I know you said kind of what you do. You test the software that makes sure that commands can get from NASA to like Northrop Grumman. Did you know they have a rocket garden? Sorry.
Northrop Grumman does?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I had
Yeah.
no idea.
It's way out in the middle of the Utah desert.
Oh.
It's like 7 miles away from Promontory Point, Utah, and there's
Wow,
all these random. It's it that's there's like a big that's out there in the middle of the desert, but there's
that's
rock,
hilarious.
and then there's this rocket garden, and there's just like random rockets and like NASA boosters and all sorts of things just hanging out. You
That's
can, you can go
fantastic.
visit. There's a log, so if you ever get the chance,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's such
I've
a
been to
sweet
Utah a
show.
grand total of one time.
Yeah, there's not much else there, but
And I lived like right next to it for 8 years, the two different states that I was in, and I only ever got to go once.
oh, there's not a lot there. But so you don't
Yeah.
when commands go are like who do you work with? How do things work? Like, who do you work with? Who do you talk to? Or are you just in a room by yourself? How does it work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, yeah, so we have it's an interesting setup. So we have basically we pretend to be flight controllers, and then we have these external vehicle emulators, different labs in various places. So most of them are on site. The ones for Boeing's commercial crew is off site somewhere else in Houston. Um, and so there will be people that work at these different laboratories, and we schedule with them in advance, like, hey, we're doing a test run. Like, when can we, match up our schedules and be available for y'all to support this test? Um, and so these computer labs offsite basically just they're set up to emulate the systems that would be on an actual spacecraft. And
Oh.
then that's our pretend spacecraft, and we're the pretend flight controllers sending commands to it. For me specifically, it's a little trickier because we can't just hop into our partners computers whenever we want, or like call Japan at what would it be 3 in the morning their time and be like, hey, can you support a test run?
Yeah.
um, what we do is that I have a tool that I use that um, it's called the IP, the International Partner Emulator, and there are little buttons for all the different partners, and it's actually more of a reference, because all it does is it gives me the port numbers that I need to plug into various services. And then there's some other tools in there that essentially just pretend that, like, hey, this is a little, it lives outside the main firewall, but it is still protected by the overall firewall. Um, and basically, this little, uh, I think of it as just like a little box. This one computer, this one machine, the emulator machine, I go in there and I say, like, hey, I'm gonna be JAXA right now, and let me open up this software that is, it's just a little very simple GUI that essentially acts as like this is a box that will request telemetry from mission control, and like, what partner do I want to be? I'm gonna like input the information I need to pretend to be that partner and request telemetry, or send them my telemetry, or there's another related tool. Sorry, one of my cats is trying to climb up the wall. Buddy, don't do that.
Yes, please do it. Do it. Where's the kitty? We love cats, so if it happens, it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, they're both in the room here with me right now. Um, I'll introduce them in a second when they're. What are you doing? He's like bouncing between the cat tower and the dresser. I don't know what's up here. Maybe I can. Turnip, you want to say hi?
Turnip! Oh, hello, Turnip. Everybody in chat is excited for Turnip.
Oh my gosh, you have fans.
Yes.
Look, buddy, you have fans
Yes.
on
You
the
have
internet.
fans. Turnip, you're
Oh my
so
goodness.
pretty.
Oh my goodness. You getting compliments?
Oh, he says,
Oh, oh.
I'm gonna join Dad for the interview.
Yes, he is. Oh, and then his
Oh,
sister Toast is on the window there. I don't know if you can see her.
they're so cute.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they
Oh.
just had their very first birthday in August. So I got them this giant cat tower as a birthday gift. It was like $200.
Oh.
I was like, it's worth it.
It's totally worth it. My one of my collaborators has a pencil bag that says, "I work hard so my cats can have a better life."
Oh, exactly. I feel that so hard. Exactly.
Yeah. Yes, as you can tell, cat back there. Yeah. Um,
Oh, good. Okay. I'm
so-
not the only one.
no, I've got one cat there, and before you came on, I had to kick the other one out because she's a little murdery.
Oh,
So
yeah.
she's a
Okay.
foster.
Yeah, I get it.
Um,
Um,
yeah.
what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So
Cats
there's
tend to do that.
I use the IP emulator and basically pretend to be external partners. And that's yeah. So that's, and like, we have some other little test tools that different disciplines use. I think mine has a few more tools than everyone else, just because I do have to kind of pretend to live outside the firewall.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there's also, other little things that we use to just kind of things that we'll build to keep track of, kind of what's going on in the background of various systems, so that we know just because we hit the button doesn't necessarily mean that the button did what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So just like ways of tracking to make sure end to end that the entire system is working the way it's expected to.
Wow. So how many like of you are, I guess I think I'm pretty sure I know the answer to my question, but for anybody in chat who doesn't, I would just like to make sure I have my facts straight. So you're at Mission Control in Houston, and you
Hmm.
guys work with the mission. So you deal with missions that involve people. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
then for things like Opportunity and the rovers, that's out at JPL in California. Is that correct?
It is. There is some overlap. Anything that mission control monitors, any launch that is overseen by mission control, um, is going to use that same software. Um, so the and it kind of depends on like what vehicle it's launching on. So because not everything that that mission control looks after has people on it. A lot of it is like it'll be like cargo resupply missions. So like Northrop Grumman, for instance, doesn't have any vehicles that they use to launch people into space, but they have the Cygnus resupplying craft, and so that's the interface that I test. Is, like if we were to be launching a Cygnus craft up to ISS to bring supplies or whatever, um, can we import telemetry from that vehicle? Can we send the telemetry we're getting back to Northrop Grumman? Um, so yeah, it just kind of depends on the vehicle. But
Okay.
yeah, if there's a like Curiosity, like a rover that is sent up on a rocket and then kind of released to go take its own little path to Mars and do its own thing, that would be, yeah, that's out of JPL.
Okay. So anything that requires like communication between things, is that mission control then?
Um, yeah, yeah, I would say. I mean, almost everything that launches out of there is mission control except for the actual payload. So like the Curiosity would be like a
That's
payload.
the oh, okay. So the rover itself is the payload, and that's JPL. But the actual like launching part of it, that's you
Yeah.
guys. Okay.
Yeah. So as soon as the payload is out of the rocket and kind of on its own
They take
path,
over.
yeah, exactly.
What about when things come back?
Yeah, same thing.
You guys handle that?
Yep, that's yeah, mission control will have they're actually these they're called flight freezes. And in my team we don't like them because the flight freezes are they restrict how you can use the software environments. And so it makes it harder for us to get our stuff done. But anytime there's going to be a launch or a landing, for the week before, um, there's this flight freeze where uh, basically, I mean, they put up signs on all of the doors around mission controls, these bright red signs that say like "flight freeze," must get approval before doing any work or whatever.
Why is
Um,
that?
Well, they don't want anybody going into the computer systems and changing something and then having that change actually cascade over to mission control, to
Mm.
the actual baseline that is currently deployed over there. And so most of the time it's not a big deal. It just means that we have to get permission before we do stuff. But we do have tests that are considered destructive, and we're not allowed to do those kinds of tests. So things like, there's something called a 1 minute failover that we do, where we go in and one by one we kill essential servers, just it will even be like we'll have somebody from OS engineering literally just pushing the button in the server room to shut off that computer box. And then we test to make sure that the backup comes on within 1 minute, for these safety critical things. Well, you
Mm-hmm.
can't really do that when, mission control is relying on these boxes for, preparation for a landing, because say if the box doesn't come up, that's really,
Yeah.
really bad.
Okay, that makes
um,
sense. That makes sense.
yeah, and then the 24 hours before the actual event, there's the complete flight freeze, the complete lockdown, where it's like we're not even letting you request permission to do stuff. It's just do not touch anything in any environment. When I say environment, there's three different basic kind of realms that the mission systems are on. There's the development environment where all the software developers will like build their stuff and do their little tests for their own specific subcode, their subsystem.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the integration and test environment that we have control over. And that is where we do the bulk of our testing, and integrating all the software components together. And then there's the mission environment where the actual software runs. And at the very end of our tests of a specific baseline of software, we will test it in the mission environment to make sure that it works the same there as it did in our integration environment. But the
Okay.
mission environment we try to kind of stay away from as much as possible until we know that everything works the way that it should,
Yeah.
because we don't want to affect anything that's going on there.
Oh
And
yeah.
so typically for flight freezes, we're allowed to do more or less whatever we want in that integration and test environment. But the day of, they don't want anybody touching anything. It's completely hands off unless you are working that mission specifically. If you are on console right now or in the support room, otherwise just stay out of mission systems altogether. Don't touch anything, uh, because they part of it is they don't want to risk anybody accidentally touching something.
Oh sure.
Um, yeah, it's all about, the idea is there are people's lives at stake here, and so you know anything that could go wrong, plan for it to go wrong.
Yeah.
Whatever we can do to prevent any possible mishap is what we're going to do. So yeah, those days we have to kind of just sit and wait for the launch or the landing to be over, and then the freeze is lifted, and then we can get back to work.
Okay, that's good. I mean, I appreciate that they do that. Yeah, if it can't go wrong, Dr. Derp needs that job. He wants to know how you get the job pressing the buttons to make everything go wrong. He says he's real good at that. Um,
Yeah.
but
So
oh, go ahead.
yeah, it's I mean, so yeah, that's part of that is us. Part of it is I know the OS engineers work with that stuff. The systems engineers work with that stuff.
Mm.
So there's kind of a lot of people involved in those kind of destructive tests.
We've got some questions from chat, and so if you guys have questions for our guests, use people are using the Ask a Science question. So thank you, because then it comes up, and we'll get to those shortly. I have to ask. I know the answer, but I just have to. I just have to. So is that why the astronauts and Boeing, like, is that what happened in the Boeing capsule? They couldn't come back. Did somebody go in during a freeze?
No, actually, so that was more about the spacecraft itself.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, so the on our end, the mission software worked beautifully.
Good.
It was so that launch happened on my birthday. I had on paper taken the day off, but I went in to watch it because at the time we were actually we were in a temporary location. Um, the human landing systems project was given our the room that we were originally in, was given to them to build out into an like an operations suite. But the room that they were going to move us into wasn't ready yet, and so in the meantime they put us in a defunct ops suite that was used for it was really only ever used for like media stuff for Artemis 1.
Oh, cool.
And so like the carpet was really pretty, and the lighting was really like soft and, like futury. But my favorite part was that at the front of the room was a video wall. And so while we were in there, our folks that test voice and video started doing their testing on the video wall instead of individual TVs, because they were like, "Heck yeah, we have access to this thing. We're going to use it." And so, I mean, it explained why the lighting was dim, because when you turned on that video wall, the
Just
room instantly became way brighter and way warmer. Because it was also really cold in that room. And so we put the launch up on our 24-foot wide video wall, and I went in just to watch the launch. A bunch of people had brought food because, again, it was a flight freeze. We couldn't actually do our jobs, so people just brought in food, and we just had like a little party and watched the launch. It was great.
that's so cool.
But you would hear like the different checkpoints. We have the the communications they use, the little beeps that you hear, and then the astronauts talking back to Houston talking back to them.
Mm-hmm.
We have the same little boxes that they use. They're called devices, DVICE, which the first time I saw one and asked what it was and was told it's a device, I was like,
You're
yeah,
like,
I know it's a device, but what does it do? I was like, that doesn't tell me anything. I know the V in there is for voice. I don't remember what the rest of it stands for, but
yeah.
yeah, NASA loves acronyms. There are a lot of them. So, uh, but it's you just like it's a little box that you'll see on every mission control console with all these little channels on it, and it's what you hook your headset up to. We have those too, and so we actually all hopped on the same flight loops as just listeners, not with any input of our own.
Uh huh.
We hopped into the flight loops to listen to the flight directors and flight controllers communicating with the astronauts,
That's so
um,
cool.
and just basically just experienced it without having to be on the hook for actually like pulling off the whole thing. Um, that was really cool because you could hear them going through the same checkpoints that we went through, like using the software that we had tested. Um, like there's an abort procedure that we test, so that like if something went wrong, we could abort the launch and bring the astronauts back home safely. You could hear them like hitting the checkpoints of like you know we've gotten to the point that we would do this kind of abort. um, Things are still looking good, so like the abort's not needed. So that was very cool to essentially like
Hear
hear
what
and
you've done and come up with and like worked on, and actually like be able to hear it being put to use and tested with real astronauts. That's so cool.
yeah,
That must have been just
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. So the the mission software really, and I'm pretty sure the software on the capsule too, which is not that would be a separate test team off at Boeing that would take care of the software on their vehicle. Um, but the software worked great. The issue was that it was sort of like physical things about the vehicle.
Mm.
There were some thrusters that weren't that started to not quite function the way that they were supposed to, um, and yeah, just like little details about like hydrogen leaks. um, and so basically there was a lot of back and forth of
What the
Boeing
problem
essentially
is.
saying like these are kind of little things and we think we can get around them, and mission control saying, okay, but these are our astronauts up there. These are our people whose lives are on the line, and unless you are 100% sure that this is gonna go okay, like we're not gonna. And it's not necessarily 100%. We acknowledge that there is always risk in spaceflight, right? You're essentially strapping a human to a bomb and launching them off of the planet. Like there's nothing safe about that.
But you
But
can see the risks and you can mitigate them and plan. Like you said, you have to plan for everything to go wrong, and it sounds like NASA definitely did.
Exactly. Yeah, it's we I mean, if you walk into building 30, which is where mission control is, there are reminders everywhere about, you know, that you have people's lives in your hands. You know, the three disasters that NASA has dealt with, um, that's still.
If it would be okay to ask the couple questions chat has sent in.
Yeah.
Um, so just give it would like to know what is the funniest thing we've ever discovered in space? What has genuinely gotten a kick out of everyone in the break room?
Hmm. I mean, I think that there are actually a lot of funny things up there. Um, I think just in terms of names, there's an object that everybody in astronomy loves because it's called the Hanny's Vorwerp.
The wait, what? Hani's Vorwerp.
Hanny's Vorwerp. Yep, it is named in Dutch,
What is that?
and I think that's the only reason that people think it's so funny. It's basically just a big gas cloud, if I'm remembering right. But I get the guy who discovered its name is Hannes, and Voorwerp is object in Dutch, and so yeah, it just became called Hannes Voorwerp, and everyone thinks it's the funniest name, and so we all love this thing, even though it's like
That's
if
so
you
funny.
named it in English, it'd be like, oh, that's boring, but like it's in Dutch, so it's hilarious.
Yeah, I thought Vorwerp kind of sounded like gas. That sounded like gas cloud, but I don't speak Dutch, you know.
Yeah, I could see it meaning gas. Like, yeah, I don't speak Dutch. It's if you told me something meant something in Dutch, I'd be like, sure, okay, I believe you, because I have no idea. Yeah,
Oh,
Voorwerp.
here you go. It's a type. It's a quasar ionization echo. What is that?
There you go. Yeah, so a quasar is basically it's a so you have a galaxy, right? And in the middle of almost every galaxy, you're going to have a giant black hole.
Mm-hmm.
And that black hole, if material gets close enough to it that it starts to fall in, that material will usually start to uh, glow. It'll get really hot because of all of the gravity that's pushing on it. Um, and you might end up getting these jets that spew off perpendicular to the plane that the material is in as it spirals in, because of that gas becomes it basically gets a magnetic field. You're ionizing all of it, you're giving it a charge, and it's spinning toward this black hole, and so you essentially generate a magnetic field, and that sends these jets of material from the top and
Like
bottom
right
of this
hand rule
thing.
style.
And yeah, exactly, it's that classic picture you've seen of the little disc with the little pew coming out of it.
Oh.
And so if one of those happens to be pointed, one of those jets happens to be pointed directly at Earth, it looks like just a point source, like a star, like a really bright star that's pointed at you. It has the diffraction spikes that a star has, that characteristic kind of diamond shape. Those are diffraction spikes.
Oh.
And that comes from looking at point sources instead of a source where light is spread out over, some area. Um, Honey's war work. that's that's good. Anyway, sorry. Um, so if one of those jets is pointed at you, it looks like just a really bright star, but it's usually in the radio frequencies. And so when they were first discovered, they were called quasi-stellar radio sources or quasars. Then we figured out,
Oh.
oh, it's actually just jets from a black hole. And we have other names for these things that, when we would see them and the jets are pointing off like this way with our line of sight. Um, the problem with the thing with astronomy is that you can have the same actual situation, but we can only observe things in two dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
We can't like walk around the star to see what it looks like at all the different angles. Um, And so you'll have situations like that where we think we've discovered some new type of object, and then it's, oh, wait, that's the same thing we already knew about. We're just looking at it at a different angle. Okay. So that's what a quasar is. It's come to now just refer to any active galactic nucleus that has jets.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Active galactic nucleus, or AGN. That's just the black hole in the middle of the galaxy is accreting stuff, and now that stuff is glowing. That's all that means.
Ah.
Um, and so the an ionization echo is basically you if you have a bigger kind of cloud of material around it, the stuff that's closest to the black hole is falling in. The stuff on the outside isn't quite being affected yet, but as that stuff in the middle is getting ionized, it's emitting light, and that light is interacting with the cloud around it. And so the cloud itself will start to glow. There will be
Oh, that's so
scattering
cool.
effects, the light from that ionization bouncing around inside the cloud. Some of the material in the cloud will get the electrons will get all excited and happy, and then they'll be lazy again and they'll re-emit the light they just absorbed.
Mm-hmm.
And so from an observer, you'll see this kind of glowing blob of stuff around this black hole.
Oh, wow. That's so
Yeah, and so
cool.
the Hani's Vorwerb is just a really big one that Hani's found. Um, oh, did I see we had a Dutch person
Yes,
in
yes.
this?
Yes, it's
Oh yeah,
Hayes.
yes, yeah, yeah, yes. That is, yeah. Everyone calls it. Uh, yeah. People will call it Hanis,
Hanny.
just for short, or yeah. But people love saying the full name because it's just so funny. It's so to the Dutch person. I promise we're not making fun of your language. We just, in English it
We like
sounds really
saying
fun,
it.
so we just love to say it all the time. So yeah, that's I think the funnest name in astronomy for sure. In
Cool.
terms of the funniest like actual object, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of it is like you can find all kinds of weird shapes in nebulae where, like, oh, that looks like XYZ. I mean, if you have kind of a more immature sense of humor, there are a lot of things that look like body parts.
It's like
So
clouds. They're just space clouds.
exactly. Yeah, that's actually nebula comes from the Latin word for cloud. So
There you go.
it's astronomers are not really great at naming things. Um, yeah, like there's the quasar thing. Pulsar is another one that's just like it looks like a star, but it's pulsing. It's a pulsar. Yeah, we'll go with that.
It's okay. Well, I'm a
Or just
geologist. We have sandstone, so very unique.
touche.
Very unique. Um, so Wombat Hole would like to know what sensors do you need to navigate in space? That's a great question.
That is a good question. Well, there are a lot of things. So some of them are the ones that are inside your vehicle. So those are going to be things that measure, say, like the temperature, the pressure, the composition of the gas that you're putting in there, because you want enough oxygen for your astronauts to breathe, but you don't want so much oxygen that the capsule is going to catch on fire. Um, so there are a lot of things like that in there. There will be sensors that are making sure that the temperatures of the actual soft or hardware in there aren't getting too hot. I mean, all kinds of things. Anything you can think of like we want to keep a human alive inside this capsule. Like, what information do we need to know to be able to do that? There's all kinds of sensors for that. And then on the outside of the vehicle, um, you will have things like, well, actually, I'm not super sure about those because we test the on Orion. It's called Medusa. It's a very contrived acronym. Like you could tell somebody really wanted it to spell something real. Um, but it's basically just the suite of sensors on the outside of the vehicle, and we test to make sure that we can get data from those from the box that's pretending to be those. Um, and we see the data, but it's they're they're called PUIs, PUIs. I don't actually remember what that stands for. But it's basically any like tiny piece of data is assigned a PUI, and it's just like this gibberish of like numbers and letters. so that they're all unique from each other, and they tell you different things, but you have to really dig into documentation to know what things they're actually telling you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I was actually trying to make a tool to look at, um, basically to make my testing a little easier by just grabbing like a couple of PUIs from each of the things that I test. But it was really hard to find, like, oh wait, where do I, like, what quantity am I actually looking at that corresponds to that PUI? It was very hard to find that information. And I
Oh,
ended up just being like, you know what, I'm just gonna use the tools I have. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
I've done
Um
that before.
so so
Power.
for me, I know like the like numbers and letters gibberish, but I don't actually really know what it corresponds to. An actual flight controller would be able to tell you that, because on their displays, they have they're called MDTs, multi-purpose display tools.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that they can build themselves. It's this sort of interactive GUI, and they can kind of put whatever information they want in it. And so if they want to know the attitude of the spacecraft for at such and such time or whatever, they can just grab that parameter and put it in there. Um, on my end, I just know that there is some gibberish associated with that value, and it's coming through on the systems, and that's good enough for me. I don't really have to know what it means. Um,
Cool.
Whereas, the flight controllers would be the opposite. They'd be like, yeah, this is the blah blah blah. I don't know exactly where, like, what gibberish it's assigned to on the vehicle. I don't know how to go through the logs where that information was captured to be able to say like what it was, you know, just in the raw data, but I know what it means.
I mean, and I think that's good because everybody, otherwise they wouldn't need both of you.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
everybody,
exactly.
if you, jack of all trades, master of none is a saying for a reason. You want to be master of your job. You
Yeah.
know. We have another question. So Spooky One wanted to know. Sorry, that's my thing's going off.
Oh, that was fun.
That was. I don't even know what that was. Oh, it was it was set on Pacific time. It's like, oh, you have coffee with a scientist coming up. Too late for that phone. Um, oh, so we have two questions. So the first one is for intuitive machines like the Odysseus moon lander, they heard that customer equipment was used to help when a system went down. Do you or your team independently have access to their sub assemblies?
No, we don't. That is their own. They have their own kind of mission control, um, their mission center, and so that software is all their stuff. Um, the rocket that was used to launch their stuff is from us. Mission control looks after that, but that's one of those things where it's a payload. So the Odysseus lander was the payload of that craft.
Uh huh.
Um, so once it was in space, it kind of went on its own way, and then that's when their flight controllers take over and make sure that it's going where it needs to go, that it does the things that it needs to once it gets there, all of that. So
Okay.
that's and there are a lot of rules about like intellectual property and um, what is it called? CUI, controlled unclassified information.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Depending on, like, which contractor is working on what and all this stuff that NASA has to follow. We all take a bunch of training about it all the time.
Oh, I'm
uh,
sure. I'm sure.
so yeah, we don't have access to any of their software. That's all them. If they did want to kind of integrate with us, and incorporate their stuff into our systems, at that point, um, I imagine there would have to be some pretty significant shifts in kind of how we do things, because again, we don't usually deal with payloads. So if we, kind of decided we were going to incorporate their stuff, then it's like, well, what other payloads are we supposed to work with? So
Mm-hmm.
I think we're probably going to leave that to them. But if they did, in theory, then that would be, we would be testing really probably just connections to them. It would be a procedure that would get handed to me. Um, and there are some things like for the vehicles, the exploration vehicles that NASA has assigned to various contractors. So like the human landing system, um, and like the gateway station that will be orbiting the moon. It's like ISS but for the moon.
Oh.
Um, yeah, yeah, it's gonna take over from ISS. So the idea is to deorbit ISS because it's really old and out of date. And so safely deorbit that, um, invest in commercial low Earth orbit destinations, so space stations that are privately owned, but you can still, pay some, little fee to go up there and do your science or whatever. So there's still a destination to go to in low Earth orbit to do your day to day stuff that people do on ISS right now. Can still send astronauts up there to do stuff, but it's a more state of the art facility now, and we'll let somebody else manage it because we're going to focus our resources on exploration and shift over to supporting a station that is orbiting the moon that makes it easier for us to land things on the moon. And then eventually, the reason it's called Gateway is that the idea is
The
that the moon will
hopping
be a
point.
gateway to hop to Mars, right? Because it's a lot easier to launch from the moon that has no atmosphere and not so much gravity than it is to launch from our actually pretty giant terrestrial planet. So,
Hmm.
so there are interfaces with all these new things that with uh, there's the Orion capsule, of course, but then there's also like Gateway and the landing system, and the spacesuits themselves actually are considered um, like their own separate, like they get their own software to communicate with, and
Whoa.
so their own interfaces. There are contractors that just work on the spacesuits. There are actually a bunch of people that work on just spacesuits. That's a lot of the biology stuff is all over like in the spacesuit area, but they'll have their own software and their own sort of interface with mission control that we will have to test once that software has actually been developed enough to be tested at a system level. Um, and those are all going to be considered external interfaces. And so communicating with those things, part of the reason that they really needed someone testing the external interface system uh, was because they knew like all these programs are going to be considered external interfaces. Like we don't have enough people to be able to test this right now. 'Cause it used to be my mentor is actually our test conductor, and so she was testing the current stuff for EIS while also doing all of the test scheduling and all of the like running the actual test runs. And so, and she has a bunch of other stuff that she does on top of that. She's actually been doing our team leads, like basically doing her job and the team lead's job because the team lead has been out because his mother passed away, unfortunately. Um, and so he's been out for a couple months dealing with all of that stuff. And so, uh, which I'm glad that I was hired before that happened, because if my mentor had had to do her job and his job and also test EIS and all the stuff that I do now, like I don't know how a single person could do that. Um, so
Wow.
they were like, okay, like we really need somebody. Like Rachel's already like barely scraping by, like she has no time to actually update any of the test procedures just to like run them how in their most the way that she knows to in her head, not what's on paper, and then just like you know get to the next thing. So we need somebody to go through and actually like be able to thoroughly test everything and go back and update the procedures to match how they're done now, instead of like having the procedure on paper be like kind of ignored because they're really out of date is the problem. So we found better ways to test things, but you have to actually go back into the documents and put like, hey, this is how we test it now. um, and so she knew how to do it, but and there were the more recent procedures for exploration that she had written documented the correct way, but like the ISS version is still antiquated and like, yeah, it doesn't work that way anymore. There are better ways to do it now. So yeah, it's I don't really remember where I was going with that, but oh, it would be an external interface, and all of these things are, and so yeah, the I'll basically be treating each of these things as, and that's probably what we would do with intuitive machines, is we would just say like a button would be added to the IP emulator for them, or I guess a column of port numbers. Um, and I would go in there and be like, okay, I'm going to pretend to be them now, and I'm going to request telemetry from mission control. Can y'all like send it over here? And then, that's probably the extent of what we would do. But we don't have access to our external partners' software. We just have the port numbers that we send it. They're in charge of whatever software they're going to use to request telemetry or send telemetry. Um, it doesn't really affect anything on our end as long as they use the port number that they say they're going to use and that we have in our documentation. That's all that needs to happen for that communication to go through. We don't have to know how it works. I have no idea what Jax's interface actually looks like.
Oh.
I just know that I can pretend to be them and use my tools to request stuff. And when it gets from mission control to my little emulator, that tells me that everything is working out from end to end in our system. And then once it's in the emulator, the idea is Japan will take it from here on their side. They can do whatever they want with it. Same thing with intuitive machines, with SpaceX, with Northrop Grumman, with Sierra Nevada, all these the private contractors too.
That's so cool. That's really cool. Spooky says, "Thank you so much for the answer." They
Oh, you're
also
welcome.
they also wanted to ask, what is the reference for attitude of the spacecraft? Is it on Earth or is it in space?
That is a good question, and that is something that the folks who test the trajectory systems would know better, because that's uh, trajectory systems are what calculate that, and they have a whole bunch of different tools.
Okay.
Um, it's interesting. The trajectory systems are actually kind of their own little thing. And when I was first hired, I was like, why is it considered so separate from core? Like, why not just build it into the core baseline? And then I learned some of the history behind it. I guess originally it was that software was managed by a different uh, division within the Flight Operations Directorate. Um, and then the Mission Systems Directorate was basically, it got handed off to Mission Systems, which makes sense because it's one of the systems used in the mission. And the way that it was put together originally was like doesn't really fit with how Mission Systems does our stuff. I
Hmm.
think it was sort of like the equivalent of somebody who like you know learned how to code for their job as like an astronomer but wasn't formally trained in coding, versus like a computer scientist who knows all of the formal, like comment all your code, have it be like, don't use go to ever, like have it be, no cheap kludgy types fixes. There are a lot of astronomers who unfortunately were taught by other astronomers instead of by computer scientists, and so their code is kind of a disaster zone, which is part of why I got so good at debugging, because I had the good fortune to be taught by a computer scientist.
Oh,
She
nice.
used the astronomy class for coding. Um, they had hired like a computer scientist who was a faculty member in the astronomy department to do all of the like teaching people how to code stuff, which I think was a really good idea. So it made me really good at debugging, and I that was actually kind of one of the things I talked about in my job interview, was that my coworkers in grad school used to come to me to help them fix their code, because they'd be like, I cannot figure out what's going wrong, uh, but I know you're good at this. Please help me.
No, I wish I would have learned from a computer science because I kind of amalgamate. I muddle my way through. So
Yeah, and there are definitely like pieces of software I've used where I was like, I wish I'd had formal training on this, because I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just reading documentation and hoping that I'm getting it right. So yeah, it makes such a big difference.
we have actually. I was gonna ask a very similar question to what our illustrious moderator Patrick is asking. Uh, I was curious what coding language, if you can say, is predominantly used.
Um,
If you
kind
can't
of a
say, it's totally
lot of
fine.
them actually.
Okay.
So I was actually originally trained in a language called IDL, which nobody uses except for astronomers. Um, it uh, the problem with it, it's a really great tool for anything that you want to do like visualization with. It's great at making plots. It's great at um, I mean, a lot of stuff that you like to do in astronomy, right? It's not really great. Like you can't parallelize it, so it's not really great for high intensity computation stuff. And the other main problem is that the license costs a lot.
Oh.
So at CU, it just so happens that the people that made IDL were alumni of CU, and so
Oh, so
CU
you guys.
got the license for like $15. And so CU really liked it, and astronomers in general really liked it because departments get discounts on it, and so all these departments everywhere are using it. And then Python came along, and Python can do a lot of the same stuff IDL can do, and it's free.
That's what I was
And
wondering if it
so
was Python.
yeah, literally the semester after I took the coding class, they started teaching Python instead of IDL.
Ah,
And I kind of wish that I'd maybe taken it that semester too, or taken it a semester later so that I could, have learned Python instead because IDL is so niche. Um, but in mission systems, and I did in grad school, I taught myself Fortran to do the more computation heavy stuff.
okay.
Fortran 77, the really old stuff. Um,
It's still
but in
used?
mission systems, there's a lot of it is just basic C, a lot of it is Java, there's Python, um, there's C sharp, that kind of like C Java smash them together and like make it work kind of thing.
Hmm.
So different things are actually written in different languages. Um, and so like my test tools, some of them are Java where I have to actually type like Java dash jar, blah 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 dot jar, um, and like run these little Java procedures that come up to do stuff. Um, some of them are just executables written in C. Um, there are some newer things that are written in Python. It's kind of all over the place. And for trajectory specifically, it was written to use Windows instead of Linux, which is part of why there's sort of a disconnect and why they're separate. Developers are working on integrating it into, like let's get everything in Linux and move away from Windows, and just do mission trajectory the same way that we do literally everything else. Um, but in the meantime, the folks that test that have to have two different. They're called DNAVs. Our little they're these little GUIs where you select your disciplines, like the flight controller disciplines, and that's where all of their commanding and I mean all the tools that they use are on there. That's like kind of your interface with the software. They have to have two of them up. They have to have a Linux one and a Windows one up to do all of their testing
Oh my
right
gosh.
now, which is a giant pain in the butt. And yeah, they do a lot. There's only two of them right now. There's the person that when our branch first took it over, they were like, okay, the developers have spent 6 months doing regression testing and not putting out new content, just regression testing the system and finding all the things that are wrong with it. That's not sustainable. We need a test team for it. So, hey, system test, can you like put somebody in your group that will test this? And so we did. And Elizabeth is a saint. She basically was like, okay, I just got handed a giant mess and I have to just figure out what to do with it. Okay, I'm going to start writing procedures, I guess. And just like opened up a Word document and started writing stuff. So they're working on moving her stuff that she wrote up in Word into our requirements repository where we can link all of the test procedures we have to individual like requirements that have to be met by the systems. So they're doing that. Um, right now, but at the time it was sort of, she was basically given a fire extinguisher and told like do what you can to put out this house fire.
Yeah.
So for a year she like did what she could to like work on it, like, to get the basics in place. And then they started interviewing, and that was the thing I interviewed for, and then they offered me the core position. And so the second guy that came on was another person that got interviewed who just came out of college, and an aerospace engineer, as opposed to like Elizabeth was trained in computer science and in coding, and so didn't have really much awareness of like what the different quantities meant. Was just like, I just want to make sure that the code works. uh Making sure that it works right is a separate issue that we will get to. um and I will say, like, it's all of this is, it's not like we're using broken software all the time. This is just like for improvements and, going forward, and also making sure that any little glitches are taken care of. um eh, Sorry. um so it's not like mission controls using broken software all the time, but in within mission systems we considered MTS to be kind of a problem child.
Yeah.
And so now that we have more than someone testing it, and now more than one person testing it, it's better. But there are only two of them right now,
Wow.
and there are 12 of us total. So, well, 13 if you count our team lead. So, there's like 10 people testing core and only two testing mission trajectory. We need more people, and so they're working on essentially like convincing the NASA customer to give us
Money.
budget for hiring some new people. I think they were approved to get an intern at least, so that's good.
Ooh.
Um,
How
so
does one
yeah, if
apply for this internship if there's anybody in chat who's intrigued?
so there are two different, if I remember right, there are two different pathways that you can go down for applying to internship. One of them is called the Pathways internship. Um, and that one, from my understanding, is like more for like veterans and like people who have kind of government adjacent jobs, um to kind of like get a foot in the door at NASA. But then the other one that I would recommend is the OSTEM internship. Those are the kind of standard internship, and so yeah, go on there and look for applications. I actually did an internship in 2011 after my freshman year of college, and mine was sort of weird because I didn't actually apply for an internship. I wasn't When I was in school, I wasn't really thinking about like what am I going to do over the summer. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm living on my own for the first time in a different state away from my family. And so then the summer rolled around, and I like, moved out of my dorm and moved back home for the summer, and was like, oh, now I need something to do with my time. What do I do with my time? And so I basically just like, I went to my mom and was like, hey, can you like just ask around and see if anyone needs help working on something, and I'll do it for free. Like, is there a way that I can like volunteer to help out with something? And so she asked around, and somebody in engineering was like, yeah, I need people to like work on components for the Orion mock-up, the one that the vehicle on the ground that the astronauts train in.
Oh, cool.
um and I was like, yeah, if you're cool with me volunteering for that, sure. So they had to do the background check and everything, but I didn't have to do any kind of enrolling in payroll. And there wasn't a very formal application process because I wasn't getting paid. I just volunteered.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I worked for free that summer, but I also got to, like,
Experience.
yeah, like build stuff for the Orion capsule that astronauts train in, and like
Pretty
see
cool.
all the cool stuff on site. And that was kind of my first taste of like, oh, this isn't really what I was planning on doing with my future, but I actually kind of love it here. Because when you work there, you really feel that like, oh, I'm part of something that's way bigger than me. Um, and you don't necessarily get that in academia. So it's maybe at a conference, but when you're just like sitting in your desk at your university and getting paid breadcrumbs to stay up all night trying to figure out why your you know data looks the way it does or whatever.
Oh, so my last
uh,
2 weeks of my life.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, or for me even worse is like grading students papers is, oh my gosh, I would much rather just like sit down one on one with a student and go through their paper and like give them feedback without having to assign a number to it. It's the like assigning the number and making sure that I'm like being fair with everybody that to me is just so draining. Like, can we just evaluate learning in a different way that doesn't involve like a grading scale and all this comparative nonsense? I just, yeah, so that's, for me it was always the like grading papers that was just the most soul-sucking part of academia.
I don't think anybody likes doing that. I think if you
Yeah,
like it, you're
that's,
lying. You're just lying to yourself.
yeah, or you're a sadist
Yeah,
and just
true.
like I just want to find ways to punish students. Like
Not about that.
that's the only way that I can envision anybody enjoying grading.
Yeah,
We
but
did have, I guess maybe I shouldn't mention this, but I will. At NMSU, we had in the astronomy department, we do have a little private Facebook group just amongst the TAs of the astronomy department where we will post things that we have read that are goofy in homework assignments. Um, so the group is called the Planet Mem Teen because I guess at some point decades ago, a student thought that one of the planets of the solar system was called Memteen, and we decided that that was a great name for the Facebook group.
oh
So
my
when we
goodness.
find like things that make us laugh on student assignments, we'll just type them in there. And of course it's all anonymous and like there's nobody. Okay, good. I'm seeing someone said that public school teachers do that
Yeah.
daily. That makes me feel better because I was like, I don't want people to think that we're making fun of them because we're not making fun of the students. Like no names ever go in there, but we are making fun of the answer because the answer is funny.
I follow quite a few comedians who are like public school teachers, and then
Oh,
like,
good.
yeah, they go out, they're literally on the comedy circuit, and they'll just be like, man, you will not believe. And
Good.
I'm just like, whoa, wow. There's a reason I don't teach K 12. I don't teach K 12.
Oh, I can only imagine. Like, because if this was college students and getting some of the answers we got, I can only imagine the kind of things they see in K
I
12.
couldn't teach K 12. Um,
Yeah, it seemed for me there was this running thing of I kept having students that would do weird things with the word density. Like someone would type destiny and or not even type but write out by hand destiny instead of density. Like
mm,
the destiny of Mars is like 3.7 grams. It's like, what?
oh,
Or spelling dense with a C instead of an S, or somebody wrote lel dense instead of less dense. Somebody wrote densier instead of denser. It was just like, why do I keep getting students that do weird things with this word? Like, and I was the only one that would encounter this.
wow.
So I was like, maybe it's something about the way I'm teaching density. Like,
No, I don't think so. I think yeah, Mars has aspirations. Mars.
the destiny of Mars.
Oh no, mine's because I like my child. I like my child, not other
Yeah.
children.
Other people's children.
I like my child.
And I guess it's because with your child, you parent them, like you can parent them, but you can't really tell other people how to parent their kids. And
Yeah,
sometimes some are just wonderful, and then some are just like, and especially like you'll see how their parents behave and you're like, "Oh, now I understand." Like in restaurants and stuff, it's you can always tell the people who let their kids run around to other tables. I'm just like, "What?
yeah.
If I had done that when I was a kid, oh my gosh. I wouldn't have even had a chance because of we would have been in the car already before I even got a chance to bug anybody else. Like we would be going home.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh man. Oh yeah. So we
but I will
have.
say my grad advisor, um, and actually her husband was also in the department and was like my kind of like backup advisor, like was on my committee and everything. Their kids were like the sweetest, like most considerate small beings I have ever come into contact with. Um, like we went on a conference together, and uh, at the time her kids were 4 and 2, and the 2-year old was constantly like, I am going to like show this new person everything that I'm interested in. Look at this thing. I can't super talk yet, but I'll like babble at you and like show you this cool thing that I like and this other cool thing that I like. And the 4-year old, uh like on one of the plane rides, he had a bagel. Their parents, that are wanting to make sure their small kids are occupied during the flight, and also like not disruptive, so they packed food. And so his dad got out a bagel for him and put the cream cheese on it and gave it to him, and he was going to eat it, but he looked at it and he like handed a piece of one half of the bagel back, and he was like, can you give this one to Agnar? And I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna cry. Like, it was so sweet. And I just, like, when I was a little kid, I would not have done that. Most kids are pretty selfish because it's hardwired in, like, you have to be selfish to survive when you're that small, right? It's like,
What's
I
eating
that would never
kids?
have occurred to me to like share my food with this more or less complete stranger. He had known me for all of 3 days by that point, I think. So I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like these childs these childs are just precious little angels." Like
Okay, well I do like my
like I
friends' kids, but
yeah, where it's just like I didn't even know that small children could be this kind. like, like I've never seen that before. So yeah, that's their kids were awesome. I Those were good kids. Like I want to email her and be like, "Hey, how are your kids doing?" Like they're probably really big now cuz that was a while ago.
you must.
Um
Yeah, you must have made a good impression on them. You must have for sure.
I hope so. Yeah, it's I did I had one of those the like naked smoothies or whatever. Um and the 2-year-old seemed really interested, so I poured a little bit into the cap and gave it to him, and he thought that that was really good, so I just kind of kept doing it. So I
That'll
think
it.
that was part of why he was like, I want to show this person cool things because he shared his juice with me.
That's adorable. That's so cute. That's such a cute story. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, of course. It's that's one of those memories of grad school that's like, oh, like those are the things I kind of miss. Don't
I
miss writing papers, but yeah.
the little things like kids make you feel really good about being a scientist for sure.
Yeah, especially like when you're
Little
doing like
things.
outreach and they're asking questions that kids always have fantastic questions. And it's like I just I get sad when I hear people telling kids, like, "Oh, don't bother them." Like they're just trying to like no, encourage them to ask questions. That's so important. That curiosity is so important. And telling them not to bother people, I think kind of encourages this, like suppression of curiosity. If someone doesn't want to be bothered, they'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
It's the but you know and even if it's something that you wouldn't bother someone about as an adult, like kids can get away with it because they're kids. So like let them ask stuff. Like they're not gonna if someone's gonna get mad at a kid for asking them a question.
That says more about the adult than the child.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. So I love when I get to interact with kids at like outreach things because they always ask just the best questions.
So I have one from Smikes that he's been waiting kindly for, but then I do want to ask you what the best question is you ever got from a kid. Um, but so Smikes wanted to know, talking about the whole um, Odysseus Moonlander, because he asked this a little bit ago. So is it fair to say that in your job, you have to assume that whatever private company your contract, the customer is that has the payload that's going on the launch, you have to assume that they wrote enough unit tests and covered enough edge cases to carry the scientists into space. Smike says that they understand space travel is going to become more of a business, but it seems like science would benefit more from this type of thing being more open source. And they would like to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so that's a very valid concern. The thing with NASA is that we are not going to launch any of our contractor stuff unless we are certain that it works. And so they do those edge cases and stuff, but NASA requires extensive documentation on all of these things. And so for every project there's the contractor side where they work on their stuff, and then there's the NASA side, the customer side, where there is a project lead for that project that is sort of the point of contact between NASA wanting status updates and the contractor that is doing the work. And that person or team of people is the person who's going, okay, I need this documentation that you did this test, I need this documentation that you did this test, I need there's so much documentation. And if you can't prove that you have met all the requirements, you don't get to launch. That's, it's just plain and simple. That's um and so that is why we sent that Boeing capsule home with no astronauts on it, because we felt that Boeing could not prove that the spacecraft was safe for the astronauts to come home in, even though it had performed well getting there. Um, we didn't want to put anything up to chance. And so the idea was, we have other vehicles that we can bring the astronauts home on. We will send this one home empty, and then we will assess what's going on with it once it's here, and sort of reevaluate how we feel about the design. um, but we have to be absolutely certain that these are things that are handled, and not all of the edge cases had been handled.
Mm.
And so the decision that we passed down, that whatever NASA decides is what Boeing or SpaceX or whoever has to accept,
Mm-hmm.
um, because they're the customer, right?
Right.
Like you're being paid by NASA to do this thing. If they decide, yeah, we don't actually want to use this vehicle that you made, that's their prerogative.
Oh.
Um, and so the what we're doing, the setup now is the most recent um, the most recent SpaceX mission, the Crew 9 mission. The capsule went up with two people instead of four, so that there were two empty seats, so that the two
To come
astronauts that
back.
went up there on Starliner can just hop into the Dragon capsule to come home. Um,
Nice.
yeah, and so the Crew 9 is all up there now, and so there's now uh, a seat for everybody,
To come
um,
back.
in a vehicle that has been end to end tested thoroughly. I mean, like I said, it's Crew 9, so we've done 9 of these launches with this vehicle already. We know that it works. The idea for Starliner is that we want redundancy. We want to be able to have options, and so even though, like, we awarded two contracts, there was the SpaceX contract and the Boeing contract, and the idea was like each of you will independently come up with a vehicle that will be able to get us to ISS and back.
Mm.
And they were given, actually Boeing was given a little bit more of a budget, um, and the same timeline, and SpaceX, got their stuff done and ready to go, and we started using that in, I want to say, 2018 or 2019.
Mm.
um, and Boeing just had a few more issues and just kept needing extensions, and of course COVID didn't make that any easier, for sure. um, so there were uncrewed flight tests that, like, the first one, something was off. Like, I think it was that, um, it's thrusters didn't fire when they were. Oh no, I remember what happened. Um, they didn't. There was not a sync up between the clock on the capsule and the clock on the rocket. So when it launched, the capsule thought that it was on a different timeline than the rocket did, and so it did not fire its thrusters at the right time and missed the space station.
Oh.
So they had to redo the first flight test, the first uncrewed flight test. Um, and once the second uncrewed flight test was successful, then they were given the go ahead to do the crewed flight test, the one that happened back in June. Um, and there were some concerns ahead of time with like possible edge cases not being covered, and Boeing provided documentation that you know showing like how rare these edge cases would be, and the launch went great. I mean, it was picture perfect.
For those of
Um,
us who don't know,
yeah.
because I don't know actually, what's an edge case?
So an edge case is like if you have it's like a very specific subset of like a combination of things that could go wrong. So
Like
basically it's like
super
on the edge
low
of
probability
possibility.
stuff.
Yeah, so it's like if you have like this thruster and this thruster right next to each other happen to both not work, um, then maybe like the spacecraft doesn't operate the way that it's supposed to, as opposed to like if this thruster and a thruster that isn't right next to it didn't work, that's a different edge case. So they were concerned about edge cases with thrusters failing in bays that were right next to each other, as opposed to like a thruster failing here and literally anywhere else. So it's sort of like a very specific set of conditions that could go wrong, that are usually highly unlikely, but you want to make sure just in case it did, um, that you were covering that. Um, and so Boeing was able to provide documentation that they have those covered for the launch. And like I said, the launch was picture perfect. It was beautiful. Once the vehicle got to the space station, though, it started just kind of acting up. Um, we were getting performance data back that we were not expecting from it. Um, and so Boeing took their materials out to the uh, the test site in New Mexico in White Sands. It's actually right outside Las
Las
Cruces,
Cruces, yeah.
White Sands test facility, um, and that's actually considered part of Johnson Space Center. Um, it's a, sort of like an affiliate campus with Johnson Space Center. So like they have the same employee assistance program. Um, their telemetry actually comes down from ISS to there and then gets routed to mission control.
Is it because it's
So
easier to get the signal to Las Cruces because there's nothing there?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a main reason. The weather is typically
Ideal.
clear, so you don't have to worry about cloud cover.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, clouds will
Houston.
absolutely mess up your telemetry. That's something that we hate in astronomy as well, is getting clouded out. Um, so there's also a facility in Guam, I think. There's So basically to try to cover as much of the globe as possible to get stuff to mission systems. There's another kind of satellite facility over in Guam, so that when ISS is on the opposite side of the planet from the US, we can still receive information. But of course, Guam is kind of in the middle of uh,
Nowhere.
water, and there's a good amount of weather there. So we on our test TVs, we like to keep up the we have
Radar.
our own weather program that Mission Control uses, so that basically we will see what the weather is at our current location, at White Sands, and at Guam, all of the places where telemetry is coming in. Um, and then if we want to, we can swap over to looking at what's going on at Kennedy in Florida. If there's like a launch coming up, we can switch over there if we want to. I mean, even if there's not a launch coming up, we could switch over there. It's just that we have no reason to if there's no launch. Um, so, uh, so yeah, it's we've got these different sites around. But there's also the test facility out there, and so they did extensive testing of thrusters to see what they could do about some of these performance issues they were seeing. Um, and ultimately, NASA decided we don't want to risk this because testing is great, but we're not seeing an improvement in the performance data. It's not matching how it was, before and during the launch. It has started degrading, and so we're not comfortable anymore with this. And so
Mm.
that's also the purpose of the abort software. We want to make sure that if we are seeing malfunctions somewhere, that we from mission control can send the command to get that capsule off of the rocket, so that whatever malfunctions are going on there, the capsule that has the astronauts in it, that part is at least safe. um,
Okay.
so if we had decided to go through with launch and everything looked great and then suddenly it didn't, while the launch was still happening, Mission Control has the capability to be able to abort that launch and save the astronauts before anything goes wrong.
Good. Wow.
Even if nothing would have gone wrong and it was just a confidence issue,
Still
we
better.
still could have aborted that launch.
For sure.
Um, so yeah, it was once we started seeing issues while it was docked to station. That was when we decided, okay, like we're not gonna continue on with this vehicle. We need to do more work. Boeing needs to do more work on this before we will approve it to be used for NASA travel to ISS.
So Slug Biker asked, we have another question in chat, and I want to ask about your future, and I know kind of wrap it up because you were spending your Saturday with us, but
I don't mind.
so Slug Biker asked how dealings with Boeing space have changed since the recent problem. So is that kind of it? NASA's just like you have to really make sure all your bases are covered. We're gonna kind of keep an eye on you because things haven't been performing up to snuff.
Um,
And I know that like this isn't your your expertise.
yeah, so it's that I'm not super sure about. I do know that when they do their like press conferences and stuff, they are always uh they do make sure to mention that you know, hey, the team that we have been working with Boeing has been fantastic through all of this. They've been working their butts off. We appreciate all the effort that they have put into solving these problems with us. Um, and so I think, yeah, that there's there's not really there's no like blame going around. There isn't any like we trust our commercial partners. Um, I think there's sort of a perception that kind of the my interpretation is the people that I work with, the people that we work with are, like I trust them, I respect the hell out of them. I know that they're going to do what needs to be done. I don't necessarily trust the like CEOs of the corporations that are, making the decisions that cascade down. Um,
But you
so
trust the scientists and the engineers who work there.
exactly, yeah. So I do know that you know the people that work on this project are not going to, you know, push to like no use our vehicle because they also like they don't want to be responsible for the death of an
No.
astronaut, right? I mean, that would be awful. So,
Yeah.
I mean, just from a moral perspective, let alone the damage that it would do to your career, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody wants to make sure that we get this right.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, I don't think that there has been really, not that I've seen, there hasn't really been a shift in our relationship with Boeing.
Good.
Um, but I'm also not close enough to that part of NASA to
Mm-hmm.
be able to really speak on it. If I was, I probably wouldn't be allowed to.
Yeah. Well, and I figure, like this, like you said, every scientist that I've ever met, they want to do good work. They want to make sure that everybody is safe. You don't become a scientist for the profits.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that is for sure.
So, so I don't. Yeah, definitely not a scientist for the money for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
when I first interviewed, A couple weeks later, I got a call from the HR department, um, and they were like, "Yeah, we were just doing a follow up call because we wanted to ask what your like pay idea is, like how much you want to be paid,
Whoa.
how much like if you got hired, how much would you want to be paid?" And I was always instructed to answer that question by saying, "Oh, commensurate with the position, with prospects for increases with performance, some flowery nonsense like that, right?" Um, told like avoid giving any specifics. So I said that, and the HR person was like, "Yeah, of course, but like, do you have a number?" And I was like, "Oh no, the jig is up." And so I just spitballed and was like, "Uh, I guess like Googling like for starting
Yeah.
pay when you have a master's degree, I was just like, I guess 70K."
That's
Um,
darn good in the
and the HR
Midwest.
person was like, "Is that the minimum that you would request?" And she asked that, and I was like, "Oh no," I gave an answer that was too high and started kind of panicking. And so I was like, "Okay, look, I'm gonna level with you. I worked in academia. I got paid like my stipend was like 21,000 a year, and they didn't waive our tuition. So we lived below the poverty line. I was barely scraping by. I had to get FAFSA loans for grad school. Like I don't know how much like what it even means to get paid a living wage. So, I mean, the most I've ever been paid was 15 bucks an hour at Starbucks. $15.10 when I got promoted.
Ooh.
So, that's what, like $30,000 a year or something. Like I only ever know what it feels like to be scraping by. So, literally like anything that I could like barely scrape by with, I would be grateful for. Like at this point I just want the work.
Can I just have like
The
two
pay is
dollars more than living paycheck to paycheck, please?
exactly. Yeah. So like literally, and she was like, "Oh wow, that sounds awful. I'm so sorry. I mean, I appreciate your honesty. Like, thank you." And then when they made the offer, they offered me 78K. And I was like, "Oh wow, dang, okay, this is great."
That's
Way more than I would
fantastic.
be making as a postdoc. So like I can actually start to pay off my grad school loans now. So yeah,
Congrats.
that's what I've been working on since starting at NASA is paying off my grad school loans
Nice.
because
Can I
I had
live?
to take out loans
How
for
how
those.
how close are you? I've got no hope. I'm just gonna live vicariously through your answer.
Um, I'm getting there. I've been putting like 2,000 a month toward it.
Oh wow.
So
Hot dog, dude. That's
yeah.
awesome.
The caveat there though is that I don't have to pay rent because I'm living with my mom. So but it's convenient because like we both work there. So,
Yeah.
like why would I, rent an apartment when in this situation I have an entire house instead of just an apartment. I, work at the same place. We split groceries, we split, like eating out or
And if
whatever.
you get
Like
along and have a good relationship,
yeah.
you know.
Well, and I also take care of like mowing the lawn and like my mom actually is she went back to school herself recently. She enrolled in a PhD program in forensic psychology and law.
Oh, cool.
Um because she's a member of the Association for Threat Assessment Professionals, ATAP. She was like one of the first 100 people to actually pass the exam to be like officially certified as a threat assessment professional.
Wow.
Yeah, she's like serious with this stuff. Um, and so she's like was already doing all this like threat assessment stuff anyway, and was like, I have to I want to like pursue this more. Like I want to learn more about this and like get more into it. And so like at one of her ATAP conferences, uh, somebody from the I think California School of Forensic Psychology uh, talked to her and was like, "Hey, like if you want a PhD, we have a program. You could do it remotely. Like we would love to have you." And my mom still doesn't seem to understand like why they were so stoked to have her because she's like, "I don't know, I'm just kind of an average student." And I was like, Mom, your definition of average is like you got a B once. That's like, stop. You know, like, well, it's not perfect grades all the time. It's still A's, Mom. Like, you're not an average student. But she was like, I guess they really want me and I'm kind of interested. And I was like, you should do it. So she's doing that now. And so I have taken over doing like the house chores that, like, we have a housekeeper that comes in to do the like overall cleaning because neither of us have time to do that level of cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have animals. So things get furry pretty quick.
Yeah,
Um, but like the laundry and the grocery shopping and the meal prep and stuff, I've been trying to take over. So
that's really
that's and
wonderful.
I'm hoping that that helps justify me living rent free.
Well, honestly, I can tell you as a parent, like, so my daughter's an adult, because I had her very, very, very young, and kind of the same thing. She wanted to move out, and we were like, hey, the economy's kind of crappy, and we love having you here at home, and just you could just maybe like live here and not pay rent and save your money. Just like take the money you would pay for rent and put it in your savings account and pretend you're paying rent, but put it in your bank account instead. So I
Yeah,
think it's honestly, I think any parent would want their kid to, save money and especially, stick around and all that.
yeah. So I hope that she's getting as much out of it as I am because
I'm
it
sure she
is
is.
a huge relief to not have to worry about rent every month. Because yeah, the money that I would have been paying toward rent, I just put on my student loan.
Yeah. No, I am sure I can tell you, like she's stoked. She's stoked, I'm sure. I'm sure. So your mom went back for a PhD.
Yeah,
Um, are you gonna go for a PhD?
eventually I'm gonna go back. Yeah, I don't necessarily know that I'm gonna go back to New Mexico. I mean, I love the people there, but living there was not really my scene. It's rough.
I've
Um,
I've been to I've been to Las Cruces once to New Mexico State. Yeah, it's a yeah. There's not a lot
it's the
there.
middle of the desert. It's yeah. And I was coming from CU in Boulder, Colorado, where, public transit is super fleshed out. You can bike or walk pretty much everywhere. Even when things are a distance away, there's the infrastructure in place to get there.
Hmm.
The only time I ever had to use my car in undergrad was to go get groceries because I didn't want to have to carry them on the bus.
Wow.
That was it. I took the bus everywhere, or I biked, or I walked. I mean, it's such an easily traversable city, and the climate is gorgeous. It's, sunny 300 days of the year, and the other 65 days are snow. It rains every now and then, but it's not like a desert. It's, just like mountain trees, and
Hmm.
it's like a rugged beauty as opposed to like a barren wasteland. So
You're really
the
selling Las Cruces here.
yeah, it's I will say the Oregon mountains are majestic as hell. They are very
Gorgeous.
pretty. Um, and actually, there is a cool thing about the environment around Las Cruces, which is that the fossilized trackways national monument is over there, where the you can see the dinosaur footprints.
Ooh.
But what isn't really known about that is that right next to it is an abandoned quarry, and you can't take stuff from the trackways because it's a national monument.
But you
Everything on
can
the
with the
ground there belongs to
quarry.
exactly. And so if you really want a fossil, you can't take it from the national park, but you can take it from the abandoned quarry right next to the park. And so my friends and I would go down there and go fossil hunting. I mean, there's some pretty steep, like you have to scramble up rock faces in some places to get where you're going. And there are scorpions and tarantulas that you have to watch out for. But, you know,
If you're on
we
the hunt for
found,
well, I mean, really, we have so there's a paleontologist streamer who's very, very adamant that fossils belong in a museum. So
yeah.
I have to.
So, yeah, we don't find, there's nothing in this quarry that's like really noteworthy. It's all the stuff that like the run of the mill. We found a bunch of
Like invertebrate stuff.
oh yeah, all
Okay,
invertebrates.
okay, okay.
Those little the little fat silver clam looking things. What are those called? Um, Shoot, I don't remember. But yeah, they're like the kind of roundish. They look like clams. They're everywhere. Diatoms. No, no, not
No,
diatoms. That's
diatoms are microscopic.
yeah. Those are. I was like,
Like
I
little
recognize that word, and then I was like, wait, I
bivalve
recognize it from watching Forensic
things.
Files.
Yeah, I have no
Um,
idea. I'm not that type of I'm a volcano scientist.
Armadillos.
Like,
We do have armadillos here in Houston, actually.
oh.
Um, Brachiopods. That's what they are. They're brachiopods.
Ah,
Yeah, there are brachiopods
cool.
everywhere. So, like those are a dime a dozen. You find those. I was specifically looking for uh, pieces of a. Oh my gosh, it's my favorite thing. Why am I blanking on the name? It's because I'm trying to remember it. Um, da, 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 da. Crinoids.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to find pieces of crinoids because I love them. They're adorable. I wish they still existed so that I could touch them because they're so cute.
They do.
Um,
They do.
and wait, they do?
Yeah, yeah. I've seen on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and look up like crawling crinoid, there's a
What?
video of a crinoid and it's like crawling on the seafloor. It's like
Oh my
trying.
god.
It's like 17 years old. But yeah, it's a crinoid and it's actually crawling on the seafloor. I
Oh
don't.
my gosh, I thought they were extinct.
No, no,
Oh, I
they're
love
just
that so much.
really hard to. I mean, they're sea creatures, but yeah, no, they're still around.
Oh my gosh, I have to find them and pet them. I have to interact with crinoids. I just think they're adorable. And so I was like, I know this area used to be underwater. There might be crinoid fossils I have to find. And I did find some little tiny, like, just little bits of things. Um, But I also found a small bone. It's like, this big. I have no idea what it is, but when I was trying to, with just tools that I had in my little, like, store-bought toolbox, trying to, like, etch it out of the rock that it was in, I accidentally broke it in half, which I was sad about until I actually looked at it, and the inside is all, like, crystallized,
Oh,
and I mean,
cool.
it's actually really pretty, like the cross section. So I was like, actually, maybe this was a good thing. This because you can see like where the marrow used to be, like the layers of the bone going on. I mean, it's very cool.
That
So
is
I was like,
so
okay, this
cool.
was like a happy accident in this case. I have no idea who it belongs to, what little critter had that bone, but I mean, it's definitely not a recent bone. It's not like a chicken bone that somebody dropped. It is definitely a fossil at this point. So
Hmm.
there's some cool stuff over there. If I found something that was actually important, like something macroscopic or like unusual, I would absolutely be like, "Hey, Houston Museum of Natural
Yeah,
Science, this is a thing you should have it."
yeah.
So,
I bet you can probably contact somebody at the museum though, and they'd like be able to tell you a little bit about it. I get emails about like meteorites and stuff. So
oh, cool, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's also very fun.
yeah.
I've never found a meteorite in the wild myself, but I have obtained little fragments, from. I think my sister got me like a little piece of a meteorite for Christmas one year. It
Mm-hmm.
has its own little like certificate that proves that it's legit.
Yeah. Which
Um,
one?
which with astronomy, in all the classes that I've had to take, it's actually not too hard to tell if a meteorite is legit or not because most of them are just iron. So if it's not dense enough to be iron, it's probably not real. And I mean, it is just a little hunk of iron. So it's like, yeah, that's a meteorite.
Well, it's cool though. That's cool though. It's really cool. That's really
Yeah, it's
really cool.
the big ones are really weird because it looks like a rock and you're like, okay, cool, it's a rock. And you pick it up and you're like, oh my gosh, this is
Mm-hmm.
a really heavy rock. What the heck? And then some of the ones that we have at the NMSU astronomy department for, outreach and like teaching and stuff, some of them have been cut in half so that you can see the inside. And you look at the inside and it's literally just solid iron. It looks like the front of your stainless steel refrigerator. just like perfectly, like the shininess. You can see like kind of the lines from the cut because it's just, yeah, it's just a block of metal, basically, just a hunk of metal that was floating in space and then it fell onto a planet.
They're really cool. I love meteorites. I was just suggesting. Brought that up because I know that I get emails like that. So you could probably contact a paleontologist at one of the universities, and they might be able to
Yeah, I
help
would
you
love
figure
to
it
know what
out.
that bone is from.
Yeah,
Yeah, they would know more than I would for sure.
yeah.
I love the like paleobiology and all that stuff. Like if I wasn't an astronomer, I would have been an evolutionary biologist. So, like really the my main motivation was always like, how did any of this happen? Like
Is
what?
that why you became an astronomer?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember being, I must have been like a year or two old because I was still in a high chair. And sitting in my kitchen in the house I grew up in, that was this really hideous like 70s kitchen with the wallpaper was white and then had a variation on plaid on it where it had the lines that were intersecting, but instead of straight lines they were wiggles, and the colors of those lines were like pumpkin orange and like burnt orange and then like forest green and lime green and
70s.
yellow. It was bad. It was objectively bad. And I remember sitting there and staring at that wallpaper and thinking, I guess, like the little kid words were, "Space can't go on forever, but where it ends, what's past that?" And then that whatever is past it can't go on forever, but where that ends, what's past that? But that doesn't make sense because, like, why does anything need to be past it if anything is past it? Like, if there's always something past it, then that's no different than space going on forever. But space can't go on forever because forever, like, at the time I just like couldn't comprehend forever
Forever,
because I
yeah.
was like 2.
That's
So
super
just
deep
sitting
for
there,
like a kid. That's
I
really
was
deep.
it was just really bothering me that just like trying to comprehend infinity with, a mortal brain, especially one that is nowhere near fully developed. So I was just like, I need to answer this question or like I'm going to lose my mind. Um, and I would also like, I still to this day sometimes will get these feelings of, it's sort of an out of body experience where I suddenly stop and just feel like it is very weird that I am an individual human and that I am alive and that anything is alive and that I have consciousness, and this sort of doesn't feel real. And it's weird that my experiences are the only ones that I'm ever going to have. It seems like consciousness should either be universal or non-existent. So like how is any of the, like, it's this very weird sort of like, it's weird that I'm conscious and like an individual organism. That whole experience is bizarre and I don't understand it. So yeah, like if I didn't study astronomy, I'd study biology because it also gets to the question of how is any of this happening.
Yeah. Oh wow. So do you think for if you like when you eventually go back, are you going to continue with astrophysics or are you going to get into like astrobiology?
I've been thinking about that because my track was cosmology specifically, um, and I love that. And especially with James Webb being up, there's a lot of cool new data coming in that makes my field way more. I mean, there was already a lot of like, what's going on here? Maybe we don't quite understand this, but now it's like, oh yeah, we definitely don't understand it now. Okay. Well, um, the big things are when they teach cosmology, the first thing they'll tell you is you have two universal assumptions that you make when you do cosmology, and that is that the universe is homogeneous and isotropic on large scales.
What
And
does that mean
basically,
for
what,
somebody who doesn't know those words, real quick?
yeah, exactly. So it means that if you zoom out far enough, the universe looks the same in this spot that it does in this spot, and everywhere else, it basically looks exactly the same. And also, wherever you are embedded in the universe, in any given direction, everything looks the same. So there isn't like a preferred direction. So the basically it would be like the Milky Way, for example, is not isotropic because if I look in the sky, I can see like, oh, there's a spot where there's a bunch of stars and there's a spot where there's not as many stars.
Okay.
So that is a preferred direction. All the stuff is over there. It's, the disk of the Milky Way and then like the
Okay.
center of the Milky Way. But if you zoom out far enough, there isn't a particular direction in the universe that looks more important than any other part.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
and you assume that the laws of physics apply the same everywhere across space time, um, or at least across space. In time, they may have changed as the universe got older, but you at least assume that anywhere you look, the laws of physics are the same. But some of the data from James Webb is sort of indicating that the universe is expanding at different rates in different directions, which violates
Ooh.
all of that and is having a lot of people scratching their heads. So that's really exciting for because for me, I mean, part of the reason that I was so stoked to be on the system test team is that I really like it when we encounter problems because it's like, ooh, a puzzle to solve. Like, oh boy, this is really fun. Like get to like go in and play with stuff. So turnip stop. He's trying to crawl under the comforter that I'm sitting on and kind of getting trapped. What are you doing, dude? You're silly. Here he is.
Oh, there we go.
He's like,
Baby.
interact with me. Anyway, I love it when weird little things come up because it's if everything just behaved the way we expected, that wouldn't really be interesting. You'd just be checking a box. It's so when we do regression testing at works, that's the stuff that I'm just like, it's another day of testing. I'm just going back and doing the same procedures I always do, and I expect things are going to work the same as they always do. So then when they don't, it's like, oh, what's this? I can wake up now. Like something's going wrong.
How
Cool. Like,
often does that happen? How often do you actually do, do you encounter a problem when you're testing things?
it depends on the like kind of what content you're testing. If you're doing just regression of stuff that already existed, it's pretty rare. But if there's new content coming out, it almost always doesn't work the way it's supposed to when you first test it. We kind of expect that, and that's why during our cycles we do these development integration tests first before the formal system release tests, um, where we just work with the developers and do these, like we're gonna integrate the thing you wrote into the whole system. Oh, it's broken now. Okay, these are the problems we're seeing, so you can go back and rewrite that part and fix it. Um, and so I actually, because my subsystem wasn't getting a whole lot of new content, I wasn't having to write incident reports really for the first while that I worked there. Um, and like something weird would happen, and I would be like, "Oh, is this an IR?" And my mentor would be like, "No, that always happens. That's expected. It's just like it's documented in the notes over here." And I'd be like, "Oh, okay. It's just a quirk of it's a limitation of the test tool, or it's this or it's that." Um, but I finally got to write my first IR in I think it was July or August. Um, and when the baseline that we just released, when that was first sent to us from the developers, I opened up my EIS display and all of the port numbers were 0, and nothing was working. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's definitely an IR because this does not happen. This is supposed to. I mean, I'm supposed to see something, and there is nothing here. So yeah, I basically wrote in my report, EIS is completely broken in this baseline. So, um, and I talked with the developer, and it turns out that he was working on content for one of those upcoming programs for the landing systems. And some of the content that he wrote, even though it's not testable right now, it was uh, he had to touch some of the things that interact with all of the subsystem, like the graphics and interfaces and stuff. And he didn't think it was going to be a problem, and then it it was a problem. It ended up affecting everything. And so it's when I told him that, he was like, "Oh, okay." Like at least it wasn't like a, "I have no idea why this is happening." It was a, "Oh, the stuff I touched, it broke it. Okay, I need to go fix that." So that was exciting. And then after that, it felt like I suddenly had a bunch of IRs to write because like random things weren't working in different places. Some of it wasn't even my subsystem. Some of it was part of the command subsystem. So the quirky thing with EIS is that um, most systems either fall into command or telemetry. EIS does both.
Hmm.
So I have to be trained in
Both.
both types of testing. And I use the command servers a lot. And there's a feature of commanding that it's safety critical because it's like a backup for a backup for a backup for a backup. The thing is, it literally never gets used because it's basically like we have to have the ability to send packages, pre-made packages of commands over to Moscow in case something happened to both Houston and our backup control system in Alabama. So if something happened where the whole US was like on fire and couldn't work, we would have to be able to send commands through Russia's mission control. And so we have to make sure that we can send these pre-packaged command things, which even if we were going to send them through Russia, there's another route to do it that's easier where you just
Okay.
directly send commands. So this really is like a backup to a backup to a backup. So nobody uses it, but I still have to test it. And I sort of accidentally deleted one of the commands that was in the group that I made before deleting the group. Um,
Oops.
and like, so I was like cleaning stuff out and I was like, oh, this information dump was in that command package I sent a while ago, but like I'm not using it anymore. So I deleted it and then went back and was like, oh, I forgot to delete the package. I'll delete that too. And then it wouldn't go away because it was confused because it was like, there used to be something here and it's not here anymore and I don't know what it is, but it's just empty. So I was trying to delete the package and it was just sitting there. It's not a huge deal. It's just taking up a few extra bytes of memory. But I was like, that's a little weird. I might as well write an IR on it because it shouldn't be happening. And I did, and somebody, one of the systems engineers saw it and immediately jumped in and was like, users should not even be able to delete things that are in these pre-planned packages. This is a problem that we need to fix. I was like, dang, okay, dude. Didn't think it was that big of a deal, but okay.
Like he could at least
Because
thank you
again,
for finding the issue.
yeah, yeah, it's well, he was basically saying like, oh, this thing you found is actually a big deal, and I was like, I mean, I didn't think so, but whatever, because literally no one uses it. I don't even, I mean, I'm sure the flight controllers are trained to use it in case, but none of them have ever had to or desired that. So yeah, it would be, it would have to be a very bad day for everybody else for that capability to ever be used. I feel like we'd have bigger
Yeah.
problems to worry about.
At some at some point,
Yeah.
you have bigger problems.
Yeah, yeah. So, but anyway, the yeah, I do want to eventually go back for my PhD. I want to pay off the loans from my first grad school first.
Mm-hmm.
um and I'm enjoying what I'm doing now, so I've kind of, it's something that my advisor told me um when I was first uh like applying for medical leave. I felt like a failure. I felt like, I couldn't handle it. I didn't make like I've done something wrong. And I'm like, I'm not like keeping up with the timeline because what the reason that I left with the masters is that I just wasn't making progress writing my thesis proposal.
Mm-hmm.
um I would sit in front of the computer and just like stare and try to write for hours and not type a single word because I would just be like trying to get my thoughts together, trying to like not be distracted by how much pain I was in. um and then the stress of having the pressure of writing would make me even more stressed. um and I mean, yeah, so I was like, what it felt like trying and failing. um and so I my advisor told me at the time, it's not that I didn't believe her, but I was like, I can't envision that. But what she told me is essentially like, there's no formula for any of this. There's no, like, you don't have to do like undergrad, grad school, postdoc, professorship. Like, that's a path that is an option, but it's not the only path. Like, that you can do so many other things. It's, you don't have to box yourself in like this. Um, and I mean, I'd been going with the plan for grad students forever, and so I felt like, how can that possibly be true? I don't see it. I don't know where I'm going to go from here. And in the intervening years and everything that has happened between then and now, I've realized, like, actually, yeah, like, just putting myself in this box and telling myself that, like, this is the path I have to take and I have to do it just right, or you know it won't be correct or whatever. Like, that's, there isn't a formula for life, and it's a lot more stressful to pretend there is and try to fit myself into that box than it is to just experience life as it happens and take opportunities when they arise and enjoy what I'm doing while I'm doing it. And when the time comes to go back to finish that PhD, I will be happy to do it, and I'll be in a place where I can focus on that and not worry about my finances or my health, or like things going on in my personal life. I'm not, I don't need to push myself through what is already a hard experience while I'm dealing with other stuff. There's no need for that. I can
Yeah.
just deal with things as they come and, you know, live my life the way I want to instead of the way I feel like I'm supposed to. Um, and I'm really grateful that in these last few years I've come to that place, because when I first left, I really could not envision how uh, I would get quote unquote back on track. Um, that track was, embedded in stone as far as I was concerned, and now I'm seeing there never was a track.
That's
So
so wise, and thank you for sharing. Like, I know that there's so many people out there who probably are in the same situation, who feel like, you have to take the path that everybody says you're supposed to take, and life just doesn't work that way.
yeah,
And it can feel really, really frustrating. And so it's so wonderful to have a guest like you that can share their story and share like where things have maybe not always been okay, and show that, dude, you work at NASA now, like that's amazing. That's so cool. It really, really is. Like, you've come so far, and from everything that you've shared, and to do it, with your disability, and representing yourself, and just like living yourself truly, and not trying to live how other people say you should, is just phenomenal. And I think you're a wonderful person. And thank you so much for being
thank you.
here.
Yeah, I did want to make sure that I got that across, because I feel like that is something I've seen a lot, that people, especially since I started working at NASA, people will say like, "Man, I wish I could work at NASA, but I don't think I have what it takes." And I just want to tell them that's not true. That is absolutely not true. Like, I work with so many different people, and I have taken such an unconventional path that, like, you can figure it out. I know you can figure it out. If I could figure it out, you can. And some of the other testers on my team come from even weirder backgrounds than mine. The person that tests ground control used to be a mortician. She was a funeral director
Whoa.
before she got into system test. Um, One of the command testers, the kind of primary command tester who has been training the newer guy, he's been there longer than I have, but he was hired not super long before I was. Um, she was an obstetrician for years before she moved over into software and system test.
Wow.
Um, the guy that I just mentioned, who he was there, I guess he started a few months before I did. The other command tester, was actually originally in flight control. He was hired as a flight controller and decided that that wasn't really the path that he wanted to take, and I guess felt that he would rather be playing with the software than having to, use it as a tool, um, to accomplish, you know, a mission. The other thing with being a flight controller, I applied for that, but I also kind of hoped that I didn't get it because it's shift work. If you are scheduled to be on console at 2 in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be awake and alert at 2 in the morning, making sure that everybody on space station is okay. If they tell you to work on Christmas, you work on Christmas. And I had enough of that with Starbucks. I was like, I don't want to do any more shift work. so
I feel
so I
that.
get it. But yeah, so they're computer scientists and stuff. But my boss actually especially is one of the things that I really admire and respect about him is that he is very open-minded about looking for people that do not have the standard computer science or computer engineering background to be testers, because he his point of view is, like, yeah, we have the computer people, but they're not going to necessarily know things that somebody in another discipline would know. And so he interviewed me because he saw the astrophysics background, and he was like, that's somebody that would understand orbital trajectory, which is, a big problem with MTS. And so when he saw that I had other experience, he was like, this is another opportunity to get someone with a diverse background into that core group and diversify that even more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also he wanted to hire both me and the guy that just got out of college and was trying to see, like, uh, you know, is there a way that I can hire both of them? So, because I don't want to miss out on the aerospace background that this guy has, uh, but I also really like this other candidate with the astronomy background. So, like, how can I? Okay, if I get this guy into the core group, uh, into the, because this guy just came out of college, he doesn't have any previous experience, but this other guy does. So I can kind of use that as a loophole to hire both of them. I think that's kind of where he was going with that.
Well,
um,
maybe, but I also
because I
do
really,
agree
because
that like diversity helps, you know, like what one person can see, another person might not, and different backgrounds really do complement each other a lot.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I love my team so much. Just that group of people, working with them is just fantastic. And it's diverse in a lot of ways. It's, not just our backgrounds, but like culturally diverse. There's like a great balance of gender in the group, because I hate it when I'll, like, look at a, and it happens at NASA a lot, unfortunately, especially in engineering, that you'll look at, like, the personnel list of a department, and it's like all men and like two women out of a group of, like 30 or 40 people. And it's just like, why? Like, come on. um but like I said, like, our lead right now is female, and I mean, actually, really, the most of our testers, like the higher level testers, are women. The those of us who are dudes are kind of the newer ones who are being trained.
Oh, nice.
And like still learning. But the old timers that have been there for a while, or who have like a lot of knowledge, are actually all women.
Oh, nice. Yeah, change is
So it's
incremental. Hopefully, it'll get better and better.
yeah, exactly. And also, just in terms of race too, my boss is a black man.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah, and he was originally a flight controller back during shuttle days.
Oh, wow.
Um, and so uh, that's a really cool perspective to have too, because he can tell us, like, oh yeah, when I was on console, we used that capability to do XYZ. Um, and so it's like, oh, that's what this software does. I mean, I know what it's supposed to look like when I test it, but I don't really know,
Like,
you know, why it does what it does, or like what users are supposed to see. I just kind of, okay, you know, it's these two boxes are talking to each other, so that's good. Um, so it's cool to have that background too. Yeah, it's a very cool team to work for. I'm happy here. And so that's why it's I don't have an exact answer for when I'm going to go back for the PhD because I'm just enjoying what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But I do want people to know that like whatever background you have, you can still there's still a path forward to what you want to do, and it might not be a path that anybody else has taken before, but life is completely open ended. You can do whatever you want.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's so beautiful. It really is. It really is. So I think we're gonna wrap up here because it's getting to be a little bit later in the day. There's one question that didn't get asked, but I would like to, if it's okay, I'll send it to you in the message, and if you, I'll give them back a written response because I know that we're kind of at a good wrap up place here, and it's getting a little later. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on and spending your day with us and sharing your story, telling us about what you do and what it's like to work at NASA, answering questions, and just coming on. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
This was a ton of fun, and I love talking about the like nerdy stuff. Like if this wasn't a like an official thing where I'm being interviewed, I would be asking you questions about all of your stuff because volcanoes are so cool.
Well, I mean, we can do this again in an unofficial capacity if you would care to, but I know that that's the powers that be.
Yes, absolutely. Like I'm always on board to, like outside of the like official NASA channel, if you want to talk about like specifically cosmology sometime, like yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just um my personal email address is just my username, but at gmail.com. So
Okay.
it's I'm not
Cool.
very creative with my user handles on most
I
platforms.
mean, I'm a volcano doctor, so it's not really again sandstone. We're not, you know. Well, thank you so much. I will definitely keep in touch and chat. Let's thank our illustrious guest. Thank you so much, Agnar. We really appreciate you. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Chat, I'm going to hop off and go behind the scenes and say farewell to Agnar. I'm going to put on our BRB scene. Go give Agnar Hall a follow. Can we shout it?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I made my account
Yeah.
yesterday, so
Oh, I
there's
have to.
nothing on it right now.
Yeah. I have to wait,
um,
but you can see him. Go give him a follow. Yes. Alrighty.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah,
Awesome.
I've been meaning to get into Twitch. Like I would hop on to watch some of the Twitch plays Pokemon way back when that happened in what was that 2015 or something. It was a long time
A
ago.
long time.
um, but never really interacted with it. I just wanted to like watch it was sort of a social experiment, so I just kind of wanted to watch the chaos unfolding. Um, but then like all my friends would talk about like all the things they're doing on Twitch, and I'd be like, I should make an account and like jump on and watch them, and then just kind of like I'd have that thought and make a mental note, but because I didn't write it down like on my to-do list, it never happened. So I'm glad that I finally had like like an external motivator to like go make a Twitch account.
Well, I'm glad you're here. There's a whole lot of science Twitch to hang out on, and maybe who knows? You know, NASA goes to TwitchCon. There were a whole bunch of space panels this past year, so
That's
maybe.
awesome. I had no idea that my understanding was Twitch was streaming like video games and sometimes anime, and that was like the extent of what I knew about Twitch. I had no idea that there were just like hey, people can just talk to each other on here and other people can like hang out and listen to the conversation. I had no idea.
Oh yeah, it's got since COVID, it's gotten so huge and so diverse, and so I'm actually working on a research project. I'm going to be
Oh,
working with some
cool.
other streamers to try to understand, how science communication on Twitch can be different than on other platforms, and what like the impact is. Can we reach people by doing things like this interview?
Oh, that's so cool.
There's all sorts of amazing communicators here on Twitch, and I think that it's a really valuable place to be able to reach people. And like when NASA does their space shuttle launches, you can have people watching that never would have ever gotten the chance to see something like that otherwise. And I think that
Yeah,
makes it so powerful.
that is so cool. That's such a good idea. I love that. I In undergrad, there was a section of the physics department because the astrophysics major was jointly supervised by the astronomy department and the physics department. Um, and a lot of the professors I had in the physics department were part of a kind of a research group embedded in that the department who had their own research, but they also did research only on like how do students learn physics? What are the best methods of teaching? And so sometimes in these classes, the professor would be like, "Hey, we're doing a study right now. If you're interested in volunteering, like put your name down on this paper here, and we'll follow up with you. And like my TA will set up a time to do this little." And it would be like you'd go up to the TA's office and you would like do a worksheet or something, and they would like observe you and ask you questions before and after and that kind of thing. And the professors actually like took all this information and used it to like fill out a framework of like these are methods that have better performance, these are methods that tend to hold students back, and like how do we tailor our teaching to fit. And I think they were actually publishing papers about like that. Some of it was just for their own use as professors on how do I teach better, but I believe they were actually putting out published papers in journals on like this is these are the learning styles that we have found students have the most, and these are the methods that get students to more intuitively understand physics so that they don't it's not just number crunching, they can think critically about the problem. And the yeah, so that's kind of what it reminds me of. I think that's such an important area of research in science. It's not just about the science, it's about sharing the science, because science is useless if you can't communicate your findings, and share them with a broader audience.
Exactly.
So I love that. That is very cool.
Well, thanks. Well, we'll have to get you to come back on stream, and maybe we can share some of those results with you next year. Hopefully,
Yeah, that would be
knock
awesome. Yeah,
knock
I'm
on
definitely
wood.
going to start watching these on Saturdays, cuz yeah, I would love to hear like what kind of stuff other people are researching. Um I guess
Cool.
you've probably like done one for yourself already.
Me?
Yeah. Yeah, like
Nope.
your streamers know what you study, right?
Oh yeah. Well, so I do for my stuff. I just kind of I do Volcano Science Sunday. So also yes, I should plug that
Oh.
probably. If you are new to my channel, I do Volcano Science Sunday. So I usually stream every Sunday. Coffee
Oh,
with a
cool.
Scientist is a once a month kind of very special event feature. So
Oh, wow.
you're super
Okay.
special. You're super duper
Wow, I
special.
assumed it was like a weekly thing. I was like, yeah, this is the thing that happens on Saturdays. Cool.
Not every Saturday, just for you.
Cool.
Uh, but yeah, I do it about once a month with the move and my new job. I took a little bit hiatus, but yeah, I do it about once a month, and then I have my vods are on YouTube. I suppose I should try to plug that, huh? What's my channel? My channel is just at Volcano Doc. Yes, so I will put it in chat. My Coffee with a Scientist VODs are up on, I've got a YouTube playlist, so this will be up there in a few weeks, probably. I'll edit it and then I'll put it up there, and it'll be up on YouTube for forever. So you could put it on your CV and have this link, and
Oh,
everybody
cool.
will have this. If you want it, I can also not put it up if you'd
No,
prefer.
no, no, that's totally fine. Yeah, no worries.
But yeah, I think it's a good place to store things like this. That way, if somebody 12 years down the line maybe wants to know, well, man, I'm a biologist, but I really don't work at NASA. Maybe they'll find your interview.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And this is such a unique platform, I think, because it sort of combines like a panel discussion with a podcast. Because, podcasts you can't really interact with. Like, you listen to them after the fact, but you can't, like, send in questions in real time. So I love that, like, you can see the, like, people commenting and asking things. And, the kind of chit chat going on in the background. That's very
Yeah.
cool.
And
It's a
even
unique
just being
platform.
able to ask you, asking a guest, because I've never met anybody who works at NASA before. you know?
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, no, never. No, well, I guess so. Well, Nerduino used to work at NASA. Nerduino used to work at NASA. He's another streamer, and he where's oh here we go. Nerduino. He was an astrophysicist, but he did his PhD in astrophysics. So he worked on like the cosmic microwave background radiation,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and he worked on like the actual like astrophysics science. He didn't work with any of the launches or astronauts or space, space
Was he
shuttles or
out at Goddard?
missions. I believe he was at JPL.
JPL. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, if I have my facts correct. But yes, he's also an amazing science streamer on Twitch, and he talks about astrophysics and stuff. There's so many scientists on here now. It's really
That
a
is very
wonderful
cool.
community.
That is super
So,
cool.
but I've never met anybody who ever works at like mission control or anything like that. So it's a great opportunity for people to meet you.
It does feel really cool to be able to walk up to the big silver doors that say Mission Control Center above them, and there aren't even handles on these doors. There's like huge metal, and there's just these like keypads, and just like pop my badge in there and enter a number, and then hear the click and be able to actually go inside. Just you'll
That's so
people
cool.
like to tour that area. Like, you can pay for Space Center Houston. You can get a tour package where they'll take you
Oh,
on site and on a tram and show you the buildings. And if you pay a little bit more, you can do either you can go up the catwalk in the space vehicle mock-up facility, where you can see like all the mock-ups that the astronauts train in, or you can do a tour of mission control. And so they'll take you into, there's a whole section of the building that is just like a museum, essentially, that like those of us who work there don't really go in there, but I walk by it all the time, and I'm like, I should check that out. And it's just like an Apollo museum.
oh, cool.
um and they'll also like they'll take people up to the old the Apollo Control Center, because they still have the original consoles from like the 60s, with the teeny tiny screens and the giant boxes that are all like they're Art Deco green.
Uh huh.
Um, and that's a historical national landmark, and so that room is preserved in its original state.
Oh, wow.
And if you go on this tour and you pay the like $80 or whatever, they'll take you into that room and show you like, yeah, these are the consoles that we sent people to the moon with,
That's
which
very
is
cool.
very kind of baffling, honestly, because like you look at how primitive the technology was, and it's just like, how did anybody survive? I mean, caveat, like, the moon landing was absolutely real. I have definitive proof that it was real because I have watched an experiment before I even worked at NASA. From Apache Point Observatory, they will beam a laser up to the moon, and it hits a retroreflector that astronauts placed on the moon, and that laser will come back, and that is used as a test of general relativity, is that the travel time of that laser is measured.
Oh,
So
cool. But
it is,
also, we put it there. That's definitive evidence.
yeah, it wouldn't work unless we put something on the moon. So a mirror, it's a mirror. A retroreflector is a fancy word for a mirror. It's just a mirror.
Mm.
We shine a laser at the mirror and it comes back. And it wouldn't work if there wasn't a mirror on the moon, and there wouldn't be a mirror on the moon if we hadn't put it there. So it's, yeah, and also the we didn't have the technology to make a movie set that looked like that back then, because you essentially would have had to recreate the sunlight that you're seeing, where it's just like, oh, the sun is right there and there's no atmosphere. You would basically have to have an entire wall of light, because it's all coming in, like the rays are coming in parallel. There's no like dispersal of the shadows that you would see if there was like a point
I
source of
never
light,
thought about
or even multiple sources of light coming in from different angles. So yeah, like we couldn't generate light on that scale back then. Maybe nowadays we could, but back then, like, we didn't have that technology. It was easier to send someone to the moon physically than it would be to pretend to send somebody to the moon.
that. Like, that's a really good argument.
So
I never
yeah,
thought about
it's
that. That's really good.
yeah, it would have been so much harder to fake it. Like it would not have been worth it. It would have cost more and it would have been less feasible. Like we already knew how to launch things into space. Launching something to the moon was not that much more of a stretch. So like it's
Oh wow.
I mean, but yeah, it's I just like I'll look at the old pictures that are up there and just like my cell phone is more advanced than the things that people put their lives into the hands of this computer system that was I mean it was on like the ticker tape, it was on the cards, punch cards being fed into a machine. I just like nowadays it's like yes, like these are state of the art modern, like it makes sense that these are computers that we use to send people to space and that these vehicles, you know, have all these capabilities to, you know, be able to save you if something goes wrong. But back then it was like these guys are basically just strapping themselves to a bomb and like hoping it works out. Like that's basically what we're doing.
Oh my gosh, Smikes is like number your punch cards. Woof.
Oh,
No.
I have heard horror stories. My mom, when she was in undergrad, was around the time that they were starting to be like, "Oh, computers are going to be the future," and so they had I think they made all of their students that were getting a Bachelor of Science all had to take like a basic coding class,
Wow.
and like the building where you actually like fed your cards in was a separate place than the building where you would code and make the cards. So she would have to like, you know, write the thing and make the punch cards and then like walk it over to this building and feed them in one at a time. And I think she told me that she did drop them once and that it was like a nightmare. So
Oh
I
my
can
god.
only imagine.
Oh my gosh. Well,
I yeah.
oof.
That's the only time that I ever could not like had to like go elsewhere for help on debugging code that I wrote was when I was using Fortran 77. I I was writing a simulation of a stellar atmosphere and it would just like break down at a line. And I knew exactly what line of the code the problem was and I was just like this looks fine. I don't see any mistakes in this. Like, why is this not working? And I finally took it to my professor and he was like, "Oh wait, you're using Fortran 77, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" And he was like, "Is this line more than 75 characters long?" And I was like, "Yes, why?" And he was like, "Yeah, it doesn't read anything after 75 characters because it was on punch cards and the cards are only so wide. So you have to basically just stop this line early and then put some random character there and then put the same random character on the next line and then pick up where you left off." And I was like, are you kidding me? It just the computer just it's not that I wrote it wrong, it's that the computer didn't want to read the whole thing because it was too much. And I was just like, oh my god,
Oh my
this is
god.
so antiquated. But I specifically chose 77 over Fortran 90 because the rules are stupid and there are a lot of them, but at least I know what they are. Whereas for Fortran 90 was when they were starting to move toward, well, we don't do punch cards anymore, and there's like some really cool stuff that other languages are doing. So let's like implement some of that, but then there's still like some of the really old Fortran stuff. And so it's like I don't know what works and what doesn't work in here.
Just stick with the
So
old because it's solid.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna stick with the at least like I know what all the rules are and I can, there's not a I'm not having to figure out like, can I actually make an array out of multiple like a bigger array out of multiple arrays, or is that illegal here? Like, I know that in original Fortran it's illegal and I have to work around it. It's I don't have to guess, so I'm just gonna stick with that. But
Mm-hmm.
man, I just yeah, thinking about how things used to be, it's like, how did anybody ever get anything done?
Dude, I have no idea. Uh, I don't know. Uh, they were a lot smarter.
I guess yeah,
I could not have probably. I don't think I could have been a scientist like 40 years ago. I don't think I would have been able to do that.
yeah. I feel like there was kind of a like the early days would have been feasible because it's like, well, no one knows anything. So if I just discover the most minor thing, it's a revolution. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's back then, but you had to have money so that you had time to just play with things to do science because if you didn't have money, then you had to like be a serf and, like plow the fields every day or whatever. So,
Mm-hmm.
like Sir Isaac Newton, like he was a rich guy, he could do whatever he wanted. So, hey, I like no big deal, just like I discovered gravity today. It's fine.
Yeah. I
Back then, like if you had resources, yeah, like your name would live on in science forever. It was like you can figure things out really easily.
yeah.
The one that I will never understand though is how Kepler figured out anything. Because like he has three laws of planetary motion and like mathematical relationships between like how objects move in the sky. And it's like, how did you figure that out? Literally, all he did was like he was Tycho Brahe's student, and Tycho Brahe was really good at just like mapping the sky. He would just go outside every night and just draw the stars and be like, "Cool, that's where they are tonight," and do it again like
Wow.
tomorrow night. And so Tycho had like these extensive logs of like just maps of where things were in the sky, and kept.
Oh no!
Am I back?
You're back! Yay!
Yay!
Okay, cool.
Oh my gosh, sorry, internet again.
No, it's
But yeah,
okay.
I just what blows my mind is that Kepler was able to look at these just 2D drawings of like this is what the sky looks like tonight and like visualize what that must have looked like in 3 dimensions and then be like, okay, this is how planets move and like these are the laws and they still apply today. They were entirely correct
Wow.
like 500 years ago or whenever that was. I mean, that blows my mind. The guy was a genius. I have no idea how he managed to do that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I was when I teach about like plate tectonics, I first talk about like, oh yeah, we know the Earth is round. We measured it, like Galileo, all of the old astronomers, like were able to
Oh,
use
what's his name?
trig.
Eratosthenes in ancient Greece with the shadows between Syene and um, I don't remember where else. Syene was the big one.
Yeah, with the shadows and actually
Alexandria.
being able to like
Yeah,
figure out like no, it really is round, and it still holds today. It still
yeah.
holds. We can get it a little bit better with GPS, but it's still pretty solid. Yeah, people back then were sure not dumb, but I honestly
Oh, yeah,
think
for sure.
like because information was so much less. Like Seneca in chat saying like, it's it, there might have been a little you can make a tiny discovery and it's huge, but also like you have a lot less to work with. Like you don't have the internet. You have to
Yeah,
have money to buy a book and learn to read and all of that jazz. So
yeah. Well, and that's I think the main reason why progress happened so slow, and now it seems like we're like constantly. I mean, it's this exponential, and I think the main contributing factor to that is equity because if the vast majority of humans are having to like plow fields just to survive, that's you don't have the people who have the the right questions to ask, like the people who would be able to contribute to solving that problem are they're busy trying to survive. So there's a very small subset of people that have enough money that they can actually play around with this stuff. How many of those people actually care about, thinking about these bigger questions and discovering things, and how many just care about like, you know, parties and like owning land and going to war and
mm-hmm.
like the other stuff that humans have been historically preoccupied with. So I saw a post once somewhere, I think like Tumblr or Twitter or something, where someone said something like the next Einstein already exists, but she lives in Rwanda and has 3 children
Hmm.
and will never have an opportunity to contribute to science.
Without doubt, good scientists can come from anywhere. It's a matter of whether or not people are given the opportunity. But
Yeah, and so it's if when you increase equity and now people don't have to worry about surviving, now people have the ability to actually pursue the things that they're interested in and can contribute their unique point of view, and that's how you get these big breakthroughs.
mhm,
All the big breakthroughs that have happened, I mean, in the last century have been cumulative. It's been not an individual that discovered something, it has been a group of people working together to solve problems and using their own skills and viewpoints to add a piece of the puzzle in so that finally the big picture comes together and now we know more than we did.
mhm,
I
yeah.
mean, that's really what systems engineering is about. Like I was reading in some of our archival documentation at NASA, that NASA invented systems engineering to be able to do the Apollo missions. And so, yeah, Neil Armstrong was the first person to set foot on the moon, but
Without
there
everybody
were
else doing
so
their
many
stuff.
people that worked on that problem. And so I was so glad to see the movie Hidden Figures come out because those human computers were absolutely essential
Mhm.
in getting us to the moon. And actually, I am very pleased to report that just I think it was last month, there was a building dedication ceremony. Building 12 of JSC was dedicated to the women of Apollo, and it was, I think, officially renamed the Dorothy Vaughan and Women of Apollo Collaboration Center or something like
Oh
that.
wow,
So
that's
you go into
phenomenal.
the building, and there are portraits on the wall of all of the women who worked, and not just Apollo. There are also like people from like the shuttle era, with little paragraph biographies about like how they contributed to the mission.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
it's very cool. That building also has a garden on top of it, which I feel like every building should have a garden on top of it. It's a very cool building. It's right next to us, but I never get to go over there because I'm always busy. So
Well, you should take a lunch break and go have lunch in a garden. Go have
yeah,
lunch.
I totally should. I can, like, if I peek over the side, I can kind of see, like, you can see that there's something up there, but I've never actually been up to the garden. I just like know that it exists. So yeah, I need to go up there. Maybe I'll like take some pictures and send them your way to
Yeah,
yeah, share with the
I
class.
would love that. I would definitely share those with the community for sure. For sure. Well, now that you're back, I just didn't want to dip. I just don't want to dip, you know.
I totally get that. No,
So
because it's fun. Like I guess even though like the official interview is over, this is still just really fun. So it's like I want to talk about science. Science is cool.
it is. Well, maybe you'll have to start streaming in an unofficial capacity and share your
Yeah,
cosmology. I mean, for real, there are so many people that love space and love science on this platform, and we are in desperate need of experts. Like there is
okay.
a huge like it's so important to have experts sharing information and to make sure that the information that people are sharing on platforms like this is reliable, facts based, and solid, rigorous, good factual information, and try to stop the spread of disinformation and make sure that you can say like, yes, I am an expert, I am trained in this field, I can tell you this is how it is, I can explain this to you, and also I know that you matter to me.
Yeah. I can only imagine the level of flat earth nonsense that you probably have to deal with.
I've gotten very lucky so far. I'm sure that's about to go down now.
I
It's
actually
not bad.
joined some groups on Facebook that they're like like cylinder earth group or something where it's like it's people that are making fun of flat earthers by pretending that like there's some alternative really valid theory, like square earth, like earth is a cube, it's not a sphere. like just to like poke fun at that stuff. And so people will post like, you know, like really poorly drawn like artwork of like the square Earth, or like
That's funny.
dumb logical fallacies like, if Earth wasn't square, then why blah blah blah, that kind of nonsense.
That's
Donut
hilarious.
Earth, yep,
Oh my
yep.
god. Time cube. Oh man, yeah. I just don't even have the I just yeah, you just say, that's not how it is, and this is the evidence, and I can give you this information, and I all I can do is
Yeah,
give you the information, man. You know,
yep.
it's really hard to try to convince something of somebody. I feel like the best thing is to just you can give them the information, try to meet them in the middle, and that's it.
Yeah, I think some people ascribe to conspiracy theories just because they want to be different or edgy. And it's like, do you actually believe that, or are you just like trying to be part of a group? Is it more of like a psychosociological thing where it's I want to fit in, so I'm gonna, but like, I don't know if you actually believe this because it's just so there's so much evidence that you're. I mean, it's been disproved. You can disprove a hypothesis. You can never prove one, but you can disprove one, and that's a hypothesis that has been very thoroughly disproven.
Well, I think
So
maybe part of it might be that people don't understand that. A lot of people think that we use science to prove things, and
that's true. Yeah.
so they're saying, well, why don't you prove it? But they don't understand inherently that it's hard to prove something is correct, but it's very easy to show that something cannot be correct.
Yeah. You can prove that something that observations fit the hypothesis to a certain degree of precision, within some bounds of error, but you can't ever get perfect measurements, and you can't ever, you can't like look into the computer code behind existence and like see what's typed up in there to know exactly how it's working. You have to
I
watch
feel
what the
that.
code is doing and figure out, okay, this it seems like it's working this way. That's interpolating fits. The two plots look basically the same, but if I zoom in, maybe they're not, and then I have to tweak my theory a little bit. It's I When I was in grad school, we tried to make sure that we had a subsection of the, like a unit in our intro classes about scientific literacy.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you can tell real science from pseudoscience. Um, this is, like if someone gives you statistics, like this is how you can tell whether those are reliable or not. Um, you know, these are, you know, the difference between, credentials that sound solid versus credentials that are actually solid. So the example that the professor that I worked with, you should check out her stuff because I feel like you and her would get along so well. Her name is Dr. Nancy Chanover, Chanover. Um, she does like planetary science and astrobiology,
Okay.
um, and she's such a great teacher. The example that she came up with was a like a fake article about a scientist who uh, had shown that you can create six-legged spiders by taking two spiders and taking two legs off of them and then breeding them together, and they'll make six-legged spiders when they breed, which is obviously, not real. But she dropped hints in this fake article about like things that aren't reliable. So like the statistic that she gave was like 80% of the time they had six legs. And so she would ask students like, if that seems reliable to you, ask yourself, if I had a parachute that worked 80% of the time, would I use it to jump out of a plane? No, you wouldn't. So like 80% sure is not a solid statistic. Or like the credentials of the scientist that did it was that he was a former professor at such and such university. And it's like, why isn't he working there still? Like, what's up with that? Um, like little things of like his methodology not quite adding up. So there are all these like little hints, and then also the common sense of like, okay, if a human loses a leg in a car accident and then has children, are the babies born with one leg? No. Like we know that just by default, common sense, that's not how
Epigenetics
that
doesn't
works.
work that well.
Exactly. Yeah. Like there are some things that carry over, not on that scale. So, you can kind of apply that logic. And so I loved that example.
It's good.
I might still, nah, I don't know if I still have that article lying around because my old NMSU email address is defunct now. They don't let you keep your email addresses when you leave.
Mm-mm.
It's Colorado did, but NMSU they were like, okay, like gone now, bye. So I don't think I have the article anymore, but I love how she constructed it. It was very well written. I'm giving her credit for it. She may have gotten it from another source. I just assumed that she wrote it. Um, I
That's
would have to
really
ask.
interesting. That's really, really interesting.
But yeah, it's when I saw that she was doing that, I was like, I feel like every science class should have this as a unit in it because wow, there's a lot of disinformation out there.
Yeah. That's really good food for thought. I do that a little bit, but I really like bringing in the statistics into it. That's some really good. It's like really good food for thought, for sure.
Yeah, I'll we're friends on Facebook. I'll go ahead and message her and see if she can like send me a link to that material
I would
that
love
I can
that.
share around. Yeah,
Yeah, I would really love that. Thank you.
yeah, of course.
Thank you. Cool. Well, we have pretty much. It's almost lunchtime, so I think the coffee might be finished because it's almost lunch.
Yeah, yeah. It's a little late in the day for coffee now.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Agnar. It was so nice to chat with you and to learn and to get to know you more. And hopefully, it looks like chat would love for you to stream cosmology info. They would like to
Okay,
learn from you. They would like to
okay.
learn from you.
I've kind of thought about that kind of stuff before. I was initially thinking about it when I got really into podcasts a couple of years ago. I was like, I wonder if I would do like maybe I could do like a podcast about space, but like that probably already exists. So I don't know.
They're out
But
there,
I
but
feel like
there's a
streaming
niche
would
for
help.
everybody. There's a niche for
Yeah, it's
everybody.
streaming sounds. It's. I always worried that I didn't have the right equipment to do like a podcast, but that I like the person who's like too late for coffee. What? But never too late for coffee. That's. I did work at Starbucks, so there is a grain of truth to that.
My stomach's my heartburn would say otherwise.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It seems you have got the right equipment. Seems you got the right
yeah.
equipment.
Yeah. I might. It's. I mean, since people are saying it, I don't know. I might. It would be cool to just talk about
Try it.
science all the time. So yeah.
Just try it. See who shows up, and yeah, let us know when you're doing it, and we'll shout you out.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Well,
I appreciate it.
thank you so much, Agnar. I really appreciate you spending your Saturday morning with us and just genuinely just like telling your story, answering people's questions, giving us an inside view into what it's like to work at NASA. Like, I cannot tell you how appreciative I am of you. Thank you so much.
This has been a blast.
It's been so much
Honestly,
fun.
I super enjoyed this. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I will be tuning in the audience the next time you do this for sure.
Cool. Good. Hopefully I'm hoping to have somebody in November. Hopefully have a November person in. So,
Awesome.
cool. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice to get to know you more. We will talk to you next time.
Yeah, yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.